Hi there, I'm Darlene. My dad invited me to our big fancy family reunion, then told me to sit at the kids' table. At first, I thought it was just a weird oversight, but then came the cake with my dad's ex-wife on it, the speeches I wasn't in, the legacy wall where I didn't exist, and the email that said I was just a loose end. They smiled in public while erasing me in private, and now I'm wondering, how long have they been planning this? How many times did I smile through being sidelined? What else don't I know? The house looked the same, but I didn't. As I stepped out of the Uber and onto my parents' wraparound porch, the Charleston air felt heavier than I remembered. Spanish moss dangled from the oaks like lazy judgments, and even the scent of blooming gardenias couldn't ease the tightness in my chest. I'd flown in from Chicago that morning, early flight, no checked bag, just a carry-on with 2 dresses and enough anxiety to last the weekend. They called it Southern charm. I called it selective politeness. Inside, the usual chaos. Laughter in the kitchen, wine glasses clinking, kids screaming in the backyard. Roast beef and cinnamon candles filled the air. Mom's signature mix of warmth and quiet control. Upstairs, I pulled on the navy off-shoulder dress I knew she'd disapprove of. The text came just as I zipped it up. Next time, wear something less open. You're not on a date. I typed, "Sure, Mom," then deleted it. No point. Downstairs, Jolene posed with Dad for a photo. Kenneth hovered nearby, plate of sliders in hand, smiling that smug, I never left grin. I knew what it meant. Same look every year since I turned 25 and showed up solo. "Darlene," Dad called, "your seat's over there, with the little ones. We ran out of space at the big table." I stared. The kids' table? He pointed to a plastic folding table by the fence, paper plates, juice boxes, and a place card that read D with a smiley face. A 9-year-old was already wrist-deep in macaroni. No one else reacted. Kenneth sipped his drink. Jolene shrugged. I walked over, sat on the plastic chair that squeaked with every shift. My knees nearly hit my chin. The kids didn't even look up. They were too busy trading stickers. Mom floated by, tray in hand. "We figured you'd be more comfortable here," she said, smiling like it was thoughtful. Comfortable? Right. I smiled back. I always did. They thought being the youngest meant I didn't mind, that I'd take whatever seat was left and be grateful. It didn't matter that I lived alone in Chicago, managed a team, paid my own bills. To them, I was still the girl who once choked on a marble. I stabbed at some carrots. Wasn't hungry. The wind lifted the tablecloth and brushed my legs. I watched it flutter and thought, maybe that's all I am to them. Decoration. Easy to overlook. Background filler in the perfect family portrait. I thought that was rock bottom. Then they brought out dessert. Just as I was about to escape to the bathroom for a quiet 20 minutes, Loretta's voice cut through the chatter from the patio. "Dessert time, everyone. Come grab your slice. Custom made, just for you." Of course it was. Servers wove through the crowd, each tray holding slices of cake topped with glossy, edible photos. Dad's had an Old Navy picture. Jolene's showed her engagement. Kenneth in that hideous seersucker suit. Kenneth's slice? A proud moment from his law firm's launch. For a second, I let myself hope. Maybe mine would show the day I got my condo in Lincoln Park, or my first book cover. Nothing flashy, just something that said, "You matter too." Then I looked down. Someone had already set my plate in front of me. It was a wedding photo, but not mine. It was Evelyn and Kenneth, her in that pearl-detailed dress I used to love. The arbor they'd married under, right here, in this house. Underneath, one unforgettable day. My stomach dropped. Kenneth chuckled, loud enough for the crowd. "Oops, wrong file. Still a great memory, though, right?" Laughter followed. Of course it did. Even Mom smirked behind her hand. Loretta leaned in, napkin in hand. "Well, it was a beautiful wedding. Shame how that turned out." I didn't speak, just stared at the cake like it had hit me. It wasn't a mistake. It never was. These things were always on purpose. No one looked shocked, just amused. I picked up my fork, set it down. My hand shook, so I tucked it into my lap. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Then Madison, teenage quietly observant Madison, sat beside me. She chewed slowly, leaned over and whispered, "Aunt Evelyn told me she stopped coming 'cause no one ever let her talk. Said it was always the same story. Same table. Same silence. I looked at her. She meant it. And I realized Evelyn hadn't disappeared. She'd escaped. I pressed my napkin to my lips, nodding, too full of emotion to speak. Everything around me was a blur of noise, like I'd been dropped underwater. They expected me to laugh it off. Again. Pretend it didn't matter. Again. But I wasn't 15 anymore. And I wasn't afraid of being called dramatic. I remembered suddenly the first time I was told to be quiet, when I hadn't done anything wrong. The scent of buttercream still clung to the back of my throat as I stepped away from the party. I didn't say a word, just walked out of the backyard, past the hydrangeas, toward the gravel path that led to the side gate. I needed air that didn't smell like nostalgia dressed in mockery. As soon as I reached the garden bench beneath the old magnolia tree, a memory came rushing in, uninvited but sharp as glass. I was 11. It was a sticky summer afternoon, and the whole family was outside for one of those cookouts Dad insisted on throwing. Jolene and I had been playing near the driveway when we heard the crunch. Someone, definitely not me, had knocked over Dad's prized Weber grill into the side of his classic Buick. A long scrape glinted along the rear door. Jolene froze. Then her lips started trembling, tears welling up on cue like she had rehearsed it. "She didn't listen," she sobbed, pointing at me. "I told her to stay away from the car." Walter stormed over, eyes narrowing at the dent like it had insulted him personally. "Darlene," he barked, "how could you be so careless?" I was too stunned to defend myself. No one asked what really happened. My mother knelt beside Jolene and wiped her tears. "She didn't mean to," she whispered, then turned to me and added, "Let it go. You're stronger. She's delicate." That sentence has stayed with me for 20 years, like a tattoo on my ribs no one else could see. I sat on the bench now, fingers curling around the edge, grounding myself. The voices behind me faded as I unlocked my phone and scrolled through old messages. I stopped on one I hadn't opened in years. Evelyn. A text from 3 years ago. I'd kept it, though I never replied. "You're not crazy. They just hate mirrors." Reading it now felt like flipping on a light in a room I'd been stumbling through. Evelyn didn't vanish after the divorce. She left because her voice had been buried under politeness and pressure. She'd once tried to speak, and they shut her out. Same way they were doing to me now. It wasn't about fitting in. It was about not disturbing the fantasy. Their version of family needed quiet women and clean stories. I tried so hard not to rock the boat, smiling through the subtle digs, laughing when I was the punchline, keeping the peace that was never meant for me. But the truth was, they didn't want peace. They wanted silence. They called it helping. I called it exile. And I wasn't going to sit in exile quietly anymore. The laughter behind me kept rolling, like waves against a rock that was finally starting to crack. I brushed off my dress and walked back toward the crowd, slower this time, letting the noise fold over me. I'd missed the toast, apparently. Fine. No one had asked me to speak anyway. Just as I reached the edge of the patio, Jolene intercepted me with that sugary smile she wore when she wanted something. "Hey, Dar," she said, swinging a baby monitor into my hand like it was a party favor. "Can you keep an eye on the kids for a bit? Mom needs help with the speeches." Loretta appeared from nowhere, voice syrupy sweet. "You're always so good with the little ones. This would really help us out." Before I could answer, Walter glanced in our direction. He didn't say a word, just gave a brief nod, the kind that wasn't a request. It was a closing statement. So there I was again, back at the fold-up table with sticky cups and crushed juice boxes. The older kids were trading YouTube jokes I didn't understand, and the toddlers were wailing over plastic blocks. I wasn't even watching them. I was watching the adults rehearse their speeches near the pergola, each of them with a neatly printed note card. Kenneth going over bullet points, Jolene adjusting her dress. Even Loretta had a few lines. No one had given me a card. No one had even asked if I wanted one. I wasn't part of the celebration. I was part of the childcare. I sat there, holding the monitor like a leash, and wondered how many more times they expected me to trade dignity for the illusion of being helpful. This wasn't kindness. This was choreography, and I was the stagehand who never got a bow. From across the lawn, I saw Madison watching me. She raised an eyebrow, then pulled out her phone. I took that as a cue and texted, "Want to sneak out for ice cream later?" Her reply came instantly. "God, yes. I already hate everyone." I smiled for the first time all evening, but it was the kind of smile that pulled tight at the corners and never reached my eyes. I looked down at the baby monitor. The static buzzed softly, like a reminder of everything I was expected to absorb without complaint. The more I said yes, the less they saw me. My silence wasn't peacekeeping, it was self-erasure. That wasn't loyalty. That was obedience, and I had obeyed enough. But before I could escape that yard, my father decided to remind me who the head of the family was. He waited until the crowd had thinned out a bit, until the plates were cleared and the wine was flowing freely. Then he motioned to me with 2 fingers, like I was still 10 and about to be scolded for tracking mud inside. We stepped to the side of the porch near the lattice, where the string lights didn't quite reach. "I know you're a little off today," he started, voice smooth like a worn sermon. "But this reunion's important, to your mother, to everyone. So do me a favor, don't make it about you. Let's keep things pretty, for once. Pretty, not honest, not fair, just clean and quiet and wrapped with a bow." I didn't answer right away. I looked at the yard, at Kenneth being handed a mic, at Loretta fixing her lipstick in a compact, at the nieces and nephews being lined up for pictures they'd forget by morning. Then I looked at him. "Pretty doesn't fix broken," I said evenly. "Maybe that's the real problem." He blinked, just once, not used to hearing anything that didn't echo his own words back at him. I walked away before he could respond. Not fast, not storming, just done. My hands weren't shaking this time. I found a quiet corner near the patio lights and sat on a low stone wall. The music had shifted to something light and vintage. Frank Sinatra, or one of those safe choices people put on when they want the atmosphere to feel timeless. Madison joined me a minute later, holding 2 glasses of sweet tea. "You know," she said, sitting beside me, "you're the only adult here who ever says what's actually going on." I let out something between a laugh and a sigh. "And look how well that's going for me." She nudged my arm. "Maybe the truth's too heavy for them, so they dump it on you." Her words cut in a soft, honest way, the kind you don't flinch from because they fit too well. I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app. I didn't know what I was writing at first. Maybe nothing anyone would read. But I started anyway. Lines, fragments, a beginning. Not a speech, a record. I didn't want to yell. I wanted to be heard. They erased my name from their stories, so I wrote one they couldn't delete. I followed the crowd toward the east wing of the house, where they'd set up the so-called Legacy Display Hall. It was meant to be the sentimental centerpiece of the evening, a curated tribute to our family milestones. Photos in expensive frames lined the walls: Kenneth's law school graduation, Jolene cutting a ribbon at some charity gala, a blown-up snapshot of Walter and Loretta renewing their vows in Bermuda. On a screen looped a slideshow, each image accompanied by soft piano music. It was subtle, polished, cold. I searched for something, anything with my name on it. A single frame, a blurry corner of a group photo. But it was like I'd never been born. Not the picture of me receiving my master's, not the book signing Mom said she was too tired to fly in for, not even the volunteer project I led that got picked up by the local news. And Evelyn? She was still there, smiling beside Kenneth in their wedding photo. Still part of the story, I guess, so long as her role didn't disturb the family script. I whispered to myself, I didn't disappear, they just cropped me out. As I turned to leave, Aunt May, one of the few left with any softness in her, caught my wrist. "Sweetheart," she said gently, eyes flicking around before she leaned in. "Walter's leaving everything to Kenneth. House, business, even the land by the lake. He's been planning it for years. Thought you should know." I didn't blink, didn't flinch. The truth didn't hit me like a punch. It felt like a confirmation, one I'd already swallowed without realizing. "So the wall was just the first step," I said flatly. She gave me a sad little smile. "He thinks it's best. Says you've made your own way." Made my own way, as if that excused erasing me entirely. Later, during cocktail hour, I stood at the edge of the lawn and watched my family laugh at a story Kenneth was telling. I didn't hear the joke, but I knew the rhythm. He'd always been good at telling the kind that made him the hero and everyone else the grateful chorus. There was an open mic for family reflections. Jolene had gone first, naturally. Then Loretta. Then Madison's younger brother. Everyone thanked each other, toasted tradition, praised legacy. I walked up. Someone said my name, soft, surprised. I took a breath. I noticed my name's not on the wall, or in the slideshow, or in any of the speeches, and that's okay, because I'm still here, and I'm not invisible just because some of you find me inconvenient. There was a pause, sharp and sudden. Walter's jaw locked. Jolene smirked without showing teeth. I stepped down, didn't wait for applause, but I got it. A few cousins, tentative at first, clapped, then silence, then glasses clinking again. I didn't need applause. I needed them to hear it, before I stopped being quiet for good. As I slipped away from the patio crowd, my phone buzzed with a notification. Habit made me check it. A new email. Subject line blank. It was from my father, a forwarded thread. I shouldn't have been CC'd, but I was. There, in crisp black text, was the line that flipped the night on its head. She's always been a loose end. Don't let her ruin tonight. Walter had written that, to Kenneth, and Jolene. I stared at the screen. For a full minute I couldn't even blink. I read it twice, 3 times, then smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when something's funny. The kind you give when the blade finally turns up out of the water. At least now I had it in writing. I slid the phone into my clutch, then turned, only to find my cousin Nora wide-eyed and whispering. "You kind of went viral in the group chat," she murmured, biting her lip. I blinked. "What?" She showed me her phone, a TikTok posted by Jolene's alt account, a 30-second clip, me at the mic. Except it was cut and cropped to look like a tantrum. The caption? "Every family has that one dramatic cousin, hundreds of likes. Comments full of crying, laughing emojis?" Someone tagged me. Someone else said, "There she goes again." My hands shook, but not from embarrassment, from rage. I found Jolene near the cocktail bar, laughing with Kenneth like she hadn't just gut-punched me online. I didn't wait. I stepped straight up. "You wanted a performance?" I said. "Let me give you the real one." She turned, eyes narrowing. "You should really calm down." "No," I said, sharp as glass. "You've used your influencer sparkle to rewrite this family's truth for years. You crop, you edit, you spin, and when someone refuses to play along, you label them a problem." She scoffed. "That's why no one listens to you." I leaned in, low and steady. "No, it's why I'm the only one you're afraid to hear." People around us froze. The air thickened. Jolene's smile cracked, then vanished. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just walked away. And if they wanted silence again, they'd have to earn it, because I was done giving it away for free. I left the patio without looking back. The cicadas buzzed like static in my ears as I crossed the gravel path toward my rental car. The air was thick with heat and judgment, but for the first time, neither touched me. Inside the car, I sat in the dark for a moment. I let the weight of the night rest on my shoulders, and then I rolled it off. I opened the family group chat. My fingers didn't tremble this time. I uploaded 3 files into a shared drive and pasted the link with a short message. "You called me a problem. Here's the proof I've been your scapegoat." I hit send. Included Walter's email, the cropped TikTok video, a snapshot of the legacy wall, one where my name should have been. My achievements weren't forgotten. They were deleted. The responses came in like fireworks. Pings, chimes, names lighting up. One cousin. "This explains a lot." Another. "Darlene, I'm so sorry." Loretta called. I let it ring. Then Kenneth messaged, "You're blowing this way out of proportion." And Jolene, predictably, "Nice try making yourself the victim again." I typed back, calm and direct. "No, I'm just done being quiet while you perform perfection." I stared at the screen until their names faded from the top of my phone. Then I opened a separate message to my father. "You erased me once. I'm making sure you remember me now, not for your shame, but for the truth you tried to bury." I didn't wait for a reply. I left the car running, deleted the group chat from my phone, and booked my flight back to Chicago for the next morning. As I drove down the long oak-lined driveway, windows down, I breathed deep. It smelled like wet earth and something else I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. They didn't lose a daughter. They lost their silence. I still had my voice, and I was just getting started. The flight home was quiet. No one waiting at baggage claim, no drama trailing me through the terminal. Just me, the sound of rolling wheels, and a calm I hadn't known in years. When I stepped into my apartment, I didn't turn on the TV or check my inbox. I poured a glass of water, sat cross-legged on the couch, and let myself be still. This silence? It didn't sting. It soothed. Later that night, I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched since before the reunion. The pages smelled dusty, unused. I wrote slowly, like testing a voice that had gone hoarse from disuse. I wasn't broken. I was buried. Now I'm blooming. Alone, maybe, but alive. The next morning, news trickled in. Madison texted first. Grandpa had a stroke. Jolene's the only one at the hospital. Then a cousin. She lost that skincare deal. The TikTok fallout hit harder than she expected. Another cousin chimed in privately. Thank you for saying what we never could. You weren't the only one they tried to shrink. I didn't reply, but I read each word twice. The family group chat split. Some stayed loyal to the image. Some quietly reached out. And some, like me, decided not to play along anymore. A few days later, a package arrived. No return address, just a soft pink envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Hand-drawn crayon lines, crooked but earnest. A dinner table, everyone seated. At the head, me. In little handwriting. Everyone's listening this time. Madison. Tears came in waves, slow and warm. I held the card like it could anchor me to something that mattered. Not perfection. Not approval. Just being seen. Maybe she'll grow up knowing that the truth matters more than the show. Maybe she already does. I pinned her drawing on my fridge. Next to an old photo of my college graduation, one my father never hung, but I always kept. I didn't need a seat at their table anymore. I built my own. And the people who matter, they'll find it. No performances, no silence, just truth. Maybe your family doesn't throw fancy reunion parties in Charleston. Maybe it's just a Thanksgiving dinner where your voice gets talked over, or a phone call that ends with more guilt than warmth. But if any part of my story felt familiar to you, I want you to hear this. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just fear wearing a polite face. I spent years thinking that keeping the family happy meant shrinking myself. I thought if I worked hard enough, smiled long enough, I'd earn a seat where I was seen, not just tolerated. But the truth is, you don't have to earn basic respect. You don't have to earn the right to exist fully, honestly, loudly. If they only love the quiet version of you, the edited version, then they don't truly love you. And listen, healing doesn't always come from reconciliation. Sometimes, healing means choosing yourself, walking away, planting your own table and saying, I matter, with or without your invitation. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the quiet one in the room? The person everyone expected to just keep the peace? Tell me in the comments. Drop a 1 if this story spoke to you, or let me know where in the world you're watching from. And hey, if this video made you feel seen, inspired, or even just understood for a moment, I'd be honored if you hit subscribe. There are more stories to tell, and I'd love to have you with me when we tell them.
I've always believed that a person's true character shows in how they treat others, especially those they think can't do anything for them. My name is Jessica Simpson, and this is the story of how I learned that belief is absolutely true. I grew up in a hardworking family. My parents didn't have fancy jobs, but they taught me strong values. My dad worked as a janitor at a big technology company, and my mom cleaned houses for rich families. They both worked very hard every single day to give me the chance to get a good education. Sometimes they went without things they needed, just so I could have school supplies or clothes. I will never forget that. Jessica, sweetheart, my mom would say, her hands rough and tired from years of cleaning, knowledge is the one thing no one can ever take from you. Her words stayed in my heart and gave me strength through the hardest times. I went to college and studied finance and computer science. It wasn't easy. I went to class during the day and worked at night cleaning office buildings just like my dad used to. But I had a dream that kept me going. I was building a special computer program, one that could predict changes in the stock market with amazing accuracy. I believed it could change the world of finance. While many students partied or relaxed during their last year, I was hard at work finishing my project. Then one normal Thursday morning, everything changed. A big investment company discovered my program and offered me $90 million for it. They also wanted me to join their board of directors. I couldn't believe it. Of course, I accepted the deal. But I didn't tell many people. I kept living a simple life and made smart investments to quietly grow my money. Not long after, I met Scott. It happened at a small cafe where I was working on my laptop. He accidentally bumped into me, and coffee spilled all over the table. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," he said, clearly upset and trying to help with napkins. His panic actually made me smile. "It's okay," I told him, laughing a little. "I'm Jessica." "I'm Scott," he replied. "Let me buy you another coffee." "It's the least I can do." That one coffee turned into dinner. Then dinner turned into more dates. Scott was kind, funny, and very sincere. He worked as a high school teacher and really cared about helping his students. I liked that about him. He wasn't impressed by money or success. He just wanted to do good in the world. 7 months later, Scott asked me to marry him. And without a second thought, I said yes. I met Scott's family not long after we got engaged. His mother, Barbara, lived in a large, fancy house in a rich neighborhood. Her husband, Jack, had passed away years earlier, but he left her a lot of money. From the very first time we met, Barbara made it clear that I wasn't the kind of woman she wanted for her son. "A cleaner's daughter?" she said as she sipped wine and looked at me closely. "How quaint." "Scott, darling, I thought you were dating that lovely doctor's daughter, Susan." "Mom," Scott said firmly, trying to stop her, but the damage was done. I could already tell I wasn't welcome. Every time we had a family gathering, Barbara found little ways to make me feel small. She once asked me to help the catering staff, saying I would feel more comfortable in the kitchen. When Scott tried to stand up for me, Barbara just laughed and said, "Oh, I'm only trying to make Jessica feel at home." His sister Jennifer wasn't much better. She was a successful real estate agent, always dressed in expensive clothes, and never missed a chance to remind me of where I came from. "Jessica, dear," she'd say with a fake sweet voice, "I have some clients looking for a cleaning service. Should I give them your mother's number?" I smiled and stayed quiet. I didn't react, not because I was weak, but because I knew something they didn't. I had my own plans. They thought I was just a poor girl who married into their world. But the truth was I was already rich. I had made millions from my financial program and had been quietly buying property all around the city, including homes in Barbara's very own neighborhood. The house right next door to Barbara's had been for sale for a while. I bought it in secret, using other company names so no one would know it was me. The house cost $15 million, and I paid for it without blinking. Soon, the family reunion was coming up. It was a big event, lasting 4 days, and family members from all over the country came to stay at Barbara's house. One evening at dinner, just a week before the event, Barbara made an announcement. "Scott, honey," she said, "I've arranged the guest rooms. You'll stay in your old room, of course. Jessica can sleep in the basement. We need the nice rooms for family who actually help with the reunion." Scott looked uncomfortable. "Mom, Jessica is my wife. She should be thankful for any room at all," Barbara interrupted. "Besides, with her background, she's probably used to much worse." I didn't say anything, but inside I smiled. Things were about to change, and soon Barbara would realize just how wrong she was about me. I just smiled and said, "The basement will be fine, Barbara." If only she knew what was about to happen. The family reunion started on a Saturday. One by one, family members arrived, their cars filling Barbara's big circular driveway. I greeted everyone with a smile, helped carry their bags, served drinks, and listened to the usual rude comments about where I came from. That evening, after everyone got comfortable in their fancy guest rooms, I picked up my small suitcase and quietly walked to the basement. It was cold and smelled a little old. In the corner was a small, narrow bed with thin blankets. I sat down on it, and the bed creaked under me. As I sat there in the dim light, I heard laughter and voices coming from the floors above me. Barbara's voice rang clearly through the vents. Can you believe she actually agreed to stay in the basement without saying a word? I told Scott he should have married Susan. At least she knows how to behave in high society. More laughter followed. My heart hurt, but I stayed calm. I checked my phone and saw a new message from my property manager. It read, "Everything is ready for tomorrow's inspection, Mrs. Simpson. The mansion next door has been fully furnished as you requested." I smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. The next morning was bright and sunny. I got up early, even though my back ached from the stiff cot in the basement. When I walked into the kitchen, it was already busy. The catering staff were preparing food, and Barbara stood in the middle, giving orders like she was running a business. "Oh, Jessica, since you're up, make yourself useful and help Nancy with the dishes," she said without even looking at me. "And please try to stay out of sight when the guests arrive. We have some very important people coming today." I looked over and saw Scott come in. He caught my eye. He looked sad, like he wanted to help, but once again he said nothing. He just reached for his coffee and looked away. That same quiet pain, the feeling that he would never really defend me, made me stand up straighter. Just a few more hours. "I actually have an appointment this morning," I said calmly, looking at my watch. Barbara turned to me quickly. "An appointment? During our family reunion? How incredibly rude." "Mom," Scott began, but his voice was soft. Jennifer walked into the kitchen just then and interrupted him. "Mother," she said, full of excitement, "the Jeremis just pulled up. You know, the couple who bought that beautiful mansion next door." I smiled to myself again. Oh, if only they knew who really bought that house. Jennifer gave me a smug look and said, "They're my biggest clients this year. I made millions in commission from that sale." Barbara clapped her hands lightly and said, "Wonderful. Jessica, before you leave for whatever small errand you have planned, at least be useful and help serve the mimosas." I smiled politely. "I really need to go. My real estate agent is waiting for me." "Real estate agent?" Jennifer laughed. "What are you looking at? Tiny apartments in the bad part of town?" Just then, the doorbell rang. Barbara gave me a sharp look and rushed to answer it. I quietly followed the others into the large entry hall. A well-dressed woman in a sharp business suit stood at the door. She looked directly at me and smiled. "Good morning, Mrs. Simpson," she said. "The mansion is ready for your final inspection." The whole room went silent. Barbara's fake smile froze on her face. She let out a nervous laugh. "There must be some mistake," she said quickly. "Jessica isn't." "I'm Jessica Simpson," I said, stepping forward. "I'm the owner of the mansion next door." Jennifer dropped her mimosa glass. It hit the marble floor and shattered into pieces. "That's impossible," she said, wide-eyed. "I handled that sale." "Yes," I said with a calm voice. "I used a shell company to keep it private. But I believe your commission check was very generous." Scott looked shocked. He stared at me, still holding his coffee halfway to his mouth. "Jessica, what's going on?" "Maybe we should all sit down," I said kindly, motioning toward the living room. "I have quite a story to tell." Everyone slowly followed. Barbara and Jennifer sat stiffly at the edge of the couch, like they were ready to run away. I took a deep breath and began. 8 years ago, I created a financial program that could predict the stock market very well. I sold it for $90 million, I said in a calm voice. Since then, my money has grown through smart investments. The mansion next door is just one of many homes I own. Barbara looked like she couldn't breathe. Jennifer's mouth hung open. "But you let us think," Barbara said, her voice shaky, "that you were just a cleaning lady's daughter who married our Scott." "Yes," I said, looking around the room. "And you all treated me based on what you thought I was." Jennifer stood up, her face red. Mother, she's clearly making this up. My real estate agent, who had been standing quietly nearby, cleared her throat and stepped forward. I can promise you, Mrs. Jeremy, the real estate agent said, that Mrs. Simpson's background is excellent. In fact, she owns the main share of the company that built this entire neighborhood. Barbara's face turned from red to pale white. This whole neighborhood? She asked in a shaky voice. I nodded. Including this house, I said softly. I bought it last month, while it was still under your late husband's estate. The final papers were signed just yesterday. The room went completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Scott looked like he didn't know what to say. He sank into a seat, his face showing shock and slow understanding. You mean, Barbara's voice trembled, this isn't my house anymore? It's mine now, I said simply. Just like the basement you made me sleep in last night. Jennifer jumped up. Mother, she can't do this. We'll take her to court. You're welcome to try, I replied calmly. My lawyers have made sure everything is legal. But for now, I'd like both of you to leave. This is my house now. Barbara gasped. But where will I go? This is my home. It was your home, I said. Don't worry, I've arranged a place for you to stay for now. There's a small apartment available in the building where my parents used to work as janitors. I hear the basement unit is nice and quiet. The family gathering turned into chaos. People whispered to each other. Some looked shocked, others seemed secretly happy to see Barbara humbled. Scott finally spoke. Jessica, why didn't you tell me any of this? He asked quietly. I turned and looked at him. Would it have changed anything? I asked. Would you have stood up for me if you had known I was rich? Because if being respected in this family depends on how much money I have, then we have a bigger problem than just where I slept. The real estate agent stepped forward. Mrs. Simpson, shall we begin the inspection of your new property? Yes, I said, standing up. Then I looked at Barbara. I'll have my staff help you pack. You have until tomorrow evening to leave. As I walked toward the door, Barbara's voice suddenly changed. It was soft and sweet now, almost begging. Jessica, dear, surely we can talk about this. We're family after all. I stopped at the doorway and turned around. Family? I said. Let's talk about family, Barbara. Last Christmas, I said, you made me sit at the children's table. You told everyone it was because I wouldn't know how to act at the adult table. Then last month, you accidentally left me out of Scott's birthday dinner. And just yesterday, you made me sleep in the basement because you said I wasn't good enough for a real room. I didn't mean it, Barbara stammered. Yes, you did, I said firmly. You meant every word, every rude comment, every insult, every little way you tried to make me feel small. You showed me exactly who you are, Barbara. And now, I'm showing you who I really am. As I turned to leave, the sound of my heels echoed across the marble floor. The house was silent. Behind me, I could hear Barbara crying and Jennifer yelling, but I didn't look back. The next few weeks were busy and emotional. Barbara and Jennifer moved out like they were supposed to, though they made a big scene. They even hired lawyers, but just like my team said, all the paperwork was solid. There was nothing they could do. I moved into the mansion next door and gave Scott space to think. I needed time too to think about our marriage and whether I could stay with someone who didn't stand up for me when I needed him most. About a month after everything happened, my security team let me know I had a visitor. I walked to the front door and found Scott standing there. He looked tired and messy, like he hadn't slept well. Can we talk? He asked quietly. I nodded and brought him into my home office. The room was warm and full of photos, including one of my parents on their 31st wedding anniversary. Scott noticed the picture and stared at it for a moment before sitting down. I've been thinking a lot, he said, about everything about us. I've also started seeing a therapist. I stayed quiet, waiting for him to continue. I failed you, Jessica. Not just at the reunion, but every time I let my mother treat you badly. I kept telling myself I was trying to keep the peace. But the truth is, I was just being a coward. Yes, I said gently. You were. He flinched at my words, but nodded. The thing is, I kept wondering, why didn't you tell me about your success? About the money? I remember last Thanksgiving, Scott said quietly, when my mom made that rude comment about your father being just a janitor, and I laughed.
He shook his head.
I actually laughed. Tears started to fill his eyes. That's when you were going to tell me, wasn't it? I nodded. I had the papers in my bag. I was ready to show you everything. But then I saw you laugh at your own father-in-law, and I realized you were just like the rest of them. I was, he admitted, and that shame is mine to carry. But, Jessica, I want to tell you what's happened since you left. He sat up straighter in his chair. I quit my job at St. John's College. That surprised me. Scott had been a teacher at that elite private school for many years. I took a new job at Basis Peoria High School, he continued. It's in the neighborhood where you grew up. The students there remind me of you, smart, strong, and just needing someone to believe in them. He paused, then added, and your mom, I haven't spoken to her since she moved out. She and Jennifer tried to turn the rest of the family against you, but it didn't work. He took a deep breath. Cousin Kathleen spoke up about how my mom treated her when she married someone without money. Then Uncle Jack shared stories about how she acted toward his second wife. It's like, when you stood up to her, it gave everyone else permission to finally speak out too. I listened carefully. Scott sounded different. He seemed more real, more mature.
There's more, he said.
I've been volunteering at the community center, where your mom used to work. Did you know they have a program that teaches money skills to cleaning staff and janitors? I shook my head. Well, I've been helping them grow that program, he said with a small smile. It's something I believe in. Why are you telling me all this, Scott? I asked. Because I want to earn back your respect, he answered simply. Not because you're rich, but because you're the same amazing woman who stayed up late helping me grade papers. The one who made soup when I was sick. I didn't deserve you before, but I want to become the kind of man who does. Before I could say anything, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was a message from Barbara. Your mother is at the apartment building. I told Scott. She's asking to talk to me. You don't have to go, he said quickly. Actually, I said, I think I do. I went to see Barbara in the small basement apartment where she now lived. It was hard to ignore the irony. She once made me sleep in a basement, and now she was living in one. Her expensive clothes looked strange in that plain, cement-walled room. Hello, Barbara, I said. She turned to face me, and I was surprised at how different she looked. Her usual perfect appearance was gone. She looked tired and vulnerable, like someone who had finally taken off a mask. Jessica, she said, then stopped, struggling to find the right words. After a long pause, she finally whispered, I understand now. Understand what? I asked. What it feels like, she said quietly. To be judged because of where you live. To have people look down on you. Her hands shook. Yesterday, I couldn't even get a table at a restaurant I've been going to for 21 years. They turned me away because of my new address. It feels awful, doesn't it? I said. She nodded, and tears rolled down her cheeks. I've been terrible. Not just to you, but to a lot of people. Living here, being treated like I used to treat others, it opened my eyes. That was the point, I said gently. She looked up quickly. You mean this wasn't just about revenge? No, I replied. Revenge would have meant leaving you with nothing. This was about helping you see. Barbara sat down on the small couch and sighed. I've lost everything, my home, my social status, my son. You haven't lost Scott, I said. He's finally making his own choices. Whether you lose him for good depends on whether you can accept the changes. She looked at me carefully. And you, she asked. Have I lost you as a daughter-in-law? I studied her for a moment. That depends on you too, Barbara. Real change takes time. Being sorry isn't enough, you have to grow. Will you help me? She asked quietly. I don't mean with money. I mean, will you help me learn to be better? It was the first time I'd ever heard her speak with true honesty. 7 months later, I hosted a dinner party at my home. Barbara came wearing a simple dress, not her usual designer clothes. She helped in the kitchen, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Jennifer came too. She had recently started volunteering at a women's shelter. It was part of her effort to grow as a person too. I had agreed to let Barbara rent one of my properties. It felt like the right step. Scott and I were still working on our marriage, taking it one day at a time. He didn't try to fix things with big promises or fancy gifts. Instead, he showed his love through small, steady actions and constant support. That evening, we all sat down for dinner. I looked around the table and felt a deep sense of peace. My parents were there, and my dad was talking with Scott about the financial education program. That program had now expanded to 2 more community centers. My mom and Barbara were sitting together, laughing and sharing recipes. The invisible wall between them, the one made by class and background, was gone. During dessert, Barbara turned to me and said, "Jessica, I want to thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For teaching me that real value isn't about where you live or what you own," she said. "It's about how you treat people." She gave me a soft smile. I just wish I had learned that lesson earlier. Later that night, Scott and I stood on our balcony. We looked out over the neighborhood, the cool night air around us. "Do you regret any of it?" he asked. I thought about everything that had happened over the past year, the pain, the hard lessons, and the growth we had all gone through. "No," I said finally. "Sometimes people need to lose everything to understand what truly matters." He took my hand, and we stood quietly, looking up at the stars. From where we stood, we could see the small basement apartment where Barbara now lived. Its windows were lit with a warm glow. It wasn't grand, but it felt peaceful. That little apartment had become a symbol, a reminder that one of the greatest gifts you can give someone is the chance to become better. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my investment team, letting me know that another one of my financial programs had been a big success. But for once, I didn't feel the need to check it right away. Because right then, I knew something more important. Some things in life are worth more than money. And finally, I was surrounded by people who truly understood that.
Surprise? I just sold the lake house to Jacqueline's dad for $700,000. Don't worry about the paperwork, I signed for both of us. You never really cared about that place anyway. I stared at the message on my phone, unable to believe what I was reading. My coffee sat untouched on my desk as I tried to process what Kevin, my husband, had done. He also sent a picture. He was standing in front of the lake house, smiling like a fool. His arm was around a young blonde woman who looked like she could be in college. I had never seen her before. She looked no older than 27. Let me introduce myself. My name is Christina Hendricks. I'm 37 years old. Today, I found out that my husband of 16 years not only has a much younger girlfriend, but also tried to sell my family's lake house to her father. That house wasn't just some building. It had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it with his own hands in 1959. I spent every summer of my childhood there. It was filled with memories of swimming, campfires, and laughter. When my parents passed away 3 years ago, they left the house to me, and only me. I finally took a sip of my coffee. It was cold now, but I didn't care. Strangely, I felt calm. A few months ago, this news would have destroyed me. But that was before I started noticing things. I found lipstick-stained receipts in Kevin's coat. I saw large amounts of money disappearing from our shared bank account. I had a feeling something wasn't right, so I hired a private investigator. Unfortunately, he confirmed everything I was afraid of. Another message came through. Jacqueline's dad already sent the money. We're thinking of remodeling, maybe adding a pool. Time to bring some youth to the place. I couldn't help but laugh a little. Kevin had always been arrogant, but this was something else. Selling property that wasn't even his? That was a new low. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Christina, it's Jacqueline. Just wanted to thank you for being so cool about the house. Daddy's super excited to make it our new vacation spot. Kevin says you never use it anyway." I saved her number but didn't respond. Instead, I called our family lawyer, Kane Williamson. As soon as he answered, he said, Christina, I was just about to call you. I received some strange documents about the lake house. Let me guess, I said calmly. I see, I said, leaning back in my chair. He tried to forge my signature to transfer the house? Yes, Kane replied. And it wasn't even a good fake. Your husband isn't exactly skilled at copying signatures. I heard papers shuffling on his end as he continued. But here's the interesting part. Jacqueline's father already sent $700,000 to Kevin's personal account. $700,000? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Yes. And since Kevin had no legal right to sell the lake house, this definitely counts as fraud. He paused for a second, then said, So, what do you want to do? What are our options? I asked. Well, Kane said with a bit of a chuckle. We could call Jacqueline's dad right now and let him know the truth. Then, we start legal action against Kevin. Or, I asked. Or, he said, we could wait until they try to file the ownership papers with the county office. Once they do, the county will realize something's wrong. That might hit them harder. Sometimes people only learn when they get a big wake-up call. I thought about Kevin's proud message and Jacqueline's clueless text. I thought about the, nights I had spent wondering why he had become so cold and distant. Let's wait, I said. How much time do we have? With that much money involved, they'll probably try to file everything in the next few days, Kane replied. I looked at the photo on my desk. It was from last summer. Kevin and I standing in front of the lake house. He was smiling in the picture, but now the smile looked fake. Was he already planning this back then? Keep me updated, I told Kane. Thanks. After we hung up, I finally replied to Kevin's text. Congrats on the sale. Hope everything turns out just the way you deserve, he answered almost immediately. Glad you're finally being reasonable. I'll send someone to pack your stuff. I looked around my office at everything I had worked so hard to build while he was making secret plans behind my back. The lake house wasn't just a building. It held memories, love, and my family's history. The fact that Kevin thought he could sell it like it was just another piece of property showed who he truly was. Another message popped up on my phone. Kevin says we should throw a housewarming party after the renovations. You're totally welcome to come if you want. I didn't respond. I set the phone down and smiled quietly to myself. Let them have their party. Let them plan their new life. They had no idea the real surprise was still coming. And this time, it would be mine to give. I would be the one watching everything fall apart. I stood up from my chair and walked to the window. The city stretched out in front of me. I had worked in this office for 7 years, ever since I opened my own law practice. Kevin once told me it was a waste of money. He said my clients didn't care about a view, but I cared. This space meant something to me, just like the lake house did. I cared about family, hard work, and respect, things Kevin clearly stopped valuing a long time ago. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Kane popped up. They just submitted the paperwork to the county. Should take about 72 hours. I smiled as the sky outside turned orange and gold with the setting sun. In just 3 days, Kevin would find out what he had really done. He would realize he had tried to sell something he didn't even own. And I'd be right here, watching the fallout from a safe distance. Because sometimes the best way to get back at someone is to let them suffer the results of their own choices. The next 3 days moved painfully slow. I kept my phone with me at all times, waiting for the moment the truth would hit him. While I waited, Kevin and Jacqueline kept sending messages, full of remodeling plans, excited ideas, and little comments about how the house needed a younger touch. I didn't reply to any of them. Then, at exactly 2:30 p.m. on the second day, my phone rang. I knew who it was before I even looked. What the hell is this? Kevin's voice came through the speaker, loud and angry. All his fake politeness was gone. The county just rejected the paperwork, he said. They're saying I had no right to sell the house. I leaned back in my chair, relaxed and smiled. Oh, really? I said. Did they explain why? Don't. Play games with me, Christina, he snapped. They said the house is only in your name. That doesn't make sense. We're married. Everything should be joint property. I could hear Jacqueline's voice in the background. She sounded scared and confused, asking what was going on. Not everything is joint, Kevin, I said calmly. The lake house was inherited from my parents. It was never in your name. You knew that. You knew, he shouted. You knew and still let me go through with it. No, I said, my voice steady. I didn't let you sell it. I let you try to sell it. There's a difference. I stared out the window again as his voice kept coming through the phone, now mixed with Jacqueline's panicked questions. I didn't say another word. Let them figure it out. I had already done my part. And now I was just watching the pieces fall. I kept my voice steady and professional. By the way, how is Mr. Matthew taking the news? There was silence on the other end of the phone. Long, tense silence. I imagined Kevin standing there, completely stunned. Finally, he spoke. His voice was tight and filled with anger he was trying to hide. He's threatening to sue, Kevin said. He said if he doesn't get his money back right away, he's going to the police. Well, that's unfortunate, I replied calmly. Especially since you've already spent some of that money. Haven't you? There was another long pause. I could almost picture him pacing the floor, running his hands through his hair the way he always did when he felt like everything was falling apart. How do you know that? He finally asked. The same way I know about the apartment you rented for Jacqueline 2 months ago, I said. The jewelry you bought her, and the weekend trips to Hawaii. I paused for a moment to let my words sink in. I'm not as clueless as you thought. Kevin. You had me followed? He asked, shocked. His tone might have been funny if it wasn't so hypocritical. After everything he'd done behind my back, he was shocked that I found out? Let's just call it doing my homework, I said. Now, I'm guessing Mr. Matthew is going to want his $700,000 back. Soon. I don't... He started, then stopped. I can't pay it all back right now. In the background, I heard Jacqueline's voice grow louder. What do you mean you can't pay it back? She snapped. My dad is going to freak out. I stayed quiet, letting them argue. For a moment. Jacqueline's voice kept getting higher and more panicked. Kevin tried to calm her down, but it was clear things were falling apart fast. You know, fraud is a serious crime, I said after a moment. Forging a signature, trying to sell property you don't own, that's not just a mistake. That's something people go to jail for. You wouldn't, Kevin said, but I could hear the fear in his voice. I don't have to, I told him. Mr. Matthew seems more than capable of taking care of that himself. Suddenly, I heard a door slam through the phone. Jacqueline's voice was fading, calling out for her father. Kevin's breathing had become fast and uneven. He was clearly panicking. Christina, please, he begged. We can work something out. I'll move out. I'll give you anything you want in the divorce. Just help me fix this. I thought about all the little lies over the years, the ones I had let go, the ones I had ignored because I wanted to believe in us. But not this time. You know what's funny? I said, leaning back in my chair. You really thought you'd get away with it. I kept my voice calm and casual, as if we were just having a normal conversation. You were so busy planning your new life, I said, that you forgot to check whose name was actually on the house deed. Just like you forgot to check whose name was on the investment account, the one you used to pay for Jacqueline's apartment. What are you talking about? Kevin snapped. The account you emptied last month, I explained. It was in my name, too. Every time you took money out or moved it around, it was recorded. Every single transaction is on paper. Mr. Matthew might want to see those records. You're bluffing, he said, but I could hear the fear starting to creep into his voice. Am I? I replied. Check your email. I had sent him everything. Bank statements, transfer records, even some text messages between him and Jacqueline from 3 months ago. Messages that clearly showed they had been making plans behind my back. There was a pause, then a sharp breath. He was reading them. How did you even get those? He asked. Let's just say, I replied. I learned from your mistakes. Kevin, I learned to keep records of everything. Suddenly, I heard a door open in the background. A man's angry voice followed. I guessed it was Mr. Matthew. Kevin's voice changed. Now he sounded rushed and nervous. I have to go, he said quickly. We're not finished with this conversation. Actually, I said with a small smile, I think we are. Good luck with Mr. Matthew. I hear he has a great lawyer. And then I ended the call. I leaned back in my chair and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt lighter. Through my office window, I saw dark clouds gathering in the sky. It felt like the perfect weather for what Kevin was about to go through, a storm of his own making. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Kane, my lawyer. Mr. Matthews' lawyer just called. They're moving forward with criminal charges unless the full amount is paid back immediately. I smiled and quickly replied, "Keep me posted. I have a feeling things are about to get very interesting." I looked at a framed photo on my desk. It was taken at the lake house last summer. My parents, my siblings, and even Kevin were in it. At the time, I hadn't seen it, but now it was clear. While everyone else smiled naturally, Kevin's smile looked stiff, almost fake. Like he wasn't really there. Maybe deep down I had known something was wrong, but I didn't want to see it. Now I did. And finally, I wasn't afraid to face it anymore. I was already looking ahead, toward a future that didn't include Kevin. And the fallout from his actions came faster and hit harder than even I expected. By that evening, Mr. Matthew had walked into the police station with a full file of documents. He was ready to press charges. Fraud, forgery, theft. He wasn't taking anything lightly. Meanwhile, Kevin kept calling. Again and again. Each call sounded more desperate than the last. He had left 7 voicemails in a row by the time I picked up. "Please, Christina," he begged. "Matthew's serious about this. He's really pressing charges. I could end up in jail." I was sitting at the lake house out on the dock watching the sunset. My feet dangled just above the water and the lake was glowing with golden light. The air smelled like summer and peace. It was quiet, calm, a complete contrast to the storm Kevin was facing. "Well," I said simply, "that's usually what happens when you commit fraud." "I'll do anything," he said quickly. "I'll give you full ownership of everything in the divorce. Just help me fix this." I couldn't help but laugh. "Full ownership of what, Kevin? The house you tried. To sell is already mine. The investment account you emptied was in my name. So, what exactly are you offering me?" There was silence on the line. He had nothing left. "That's what I thought," I added. "Oh, and by the way," I continued, "Jacqueline stopped by earlier." His voice changed immediately, sharper, and more panicked. "Why? What did she say?" "She came to apologize," I said. "Apparently, her father showed her all the proof. The texts you sent her months ago. The ones where you promised to leave me." Kevin didn't answer, but I could imagine the look on his face. She was shocked, Kevin. She came here crying. Her mascara was all over her face. She said you told her we were separated, that we were only staying married for appearances. I'd made Jacqueline a cup of tea. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just let her sit with the truth. Sometimes the best kind of revenge is doing nothing. Just letting people see who someone really is. "She's gone now," Kevin finally said, his voice cracking. "She went back to her father's house. She also said she's going to focus on her career instead of wasting time on lying older men," I added. Her words, not mine. Then I heard something crash on his end. He cursed under his breath. "Oh. And one more thing," I said casually. "Mr. Matthews' lawyer called. They're willing to drop the criminal charges if you repay the full amount within 72 hours. I paused, letting that sink in. Pretty generous of them, don't you think? "I can't come up with that kind of money in just 3 days," Kevin said, his voice full of panic. "Actually, you can," I replied. "Sell your fancy boat. Take money from your retirement account. Sell those silly collector cars you bought last year. That might be enough." There was another loud crash in the background, something breaking again, followed by the sound of Kevin breathing hard like he was trying not to lose control. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he snapped. "No, Kevin," I said calmly. "I'm not enjoying this. I'm just finally seeing who you really are." Then I ended the call. I sat quietly, looking out over the lake. The water was still and smooth like glass. The colors of the sky reflected perfectly in it, My grandfather used to say, "Still waters run deep." He meant that the quietest people often think the deepest thoughts. I think he would have been proud of how things turned out. Over the next week, I stayed in the background and let my lawyer handle everything. Through him, I watched Kevin scramble to raise the money. He had to sell his favorite things, his boat, the expensive cars, and even empty out his retirement savings. I heard he even borrowed from friends. It was a mess. But in the end, he managed to pay Mr. Matthew back, just hours before the deadline. After that, our divorce moved quickly. Kevin, tired and completely defeated, didn't fight me on anything. He signed the papers quietly and gave me exactly what I asked for. Not that there was much left to give. He had already lost almost everything. The last time I saw him was at the courthouse. He looked different, older, worn out. His expensive clothes were gone. Instead, he wore plain, cheap ones. He looked like someone who had finally been forced to face the truth. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said softly. "No," I replied. "You never meant to get caught." "That's different." He nodded slowly, his shoulders sagging. "The lake house. It really is beautiful," he said. "I should have appreciated it more." "You should have appreciated a lot of things more, Kevin," I said. He turned to leave, then stopped and looked back one last time. "What will you do now?" he asked. I smiled, thinking about the plans I had already drawn up. I wasn't going to change the lake house into something new. I was going to restore it, bring it back to the way my grandfather had built it. Simple, strong, and full of history. "I'm going to keep building the life I deserve," I told him, "and this time I'm doing it my way." The following weekend, I picked up the first paintbrush. A new beginning had already begun. I decided to host a family reunion at the lake house. It had been a long time since we were all together. Cousins, aunts, uncles, people Kevin had slowly pushed out of my life over the years, came back for the weekend. The house that once felt empty was now full of familiar voices, laughter, and love. We sat around the fire pit, shared meals on the porch, and told stories late into the night. Everyone remembered the good times, the summers we spent swimming in the lake, fishing off the dock, and eating homemade meals in the kitchen. We talked about my grandfather and how he built the house with his own hands. We talked about how close we all used to be, and how important it was to keep that connection alive. That evening, I stood on the dock and watched the kids splash around in the water. The adults chatted nearby, some holding drinks, others just enjoying the cool breeze. The setting sun painted the lake in shades of orange and pink. As I looked around, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The lake house was alive again. There was joy in the air, the kind of joy that had been missing for far too long. The sound of laughter echoed through the trees, and I knew my grandfather would have been proud. This was the life he had wanted for us, a place where family came together, where love and memories were made. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Kane, my lawyer. "Final divorce papers are filed. It's officially over." I stared at the message for a moment, then looked back out at the lake. The water was calm, stretching out to the horizon. I smiled. No, I thought. It's not over, it's just beginning. People often say that revenge means getting even, but I've learned something better. Sometimes the best kind of revenge is freedom. Freedom to move on. Freedom to live a life that's honest and true. Freedom to be surrounded by people who love you, not for what you have, but for who you are. I had spent years trying to fix something that was never whole. Now I was free to build something new, something better. The lake house stands as a symbol of that. It's not just a building or a piece of land. It's a home filled with history, a place that carries stories, strength, and love. It's more than just a victory over betrayal. It's the start of something meaningful. This time, I'm not looking back. This time, I'm building forward, with hope, with love, and with everything I've learned. The text came through while I was helping a customer in my shop. It said, "I'm leaving you and moving to Seattle with my 18-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account." My hands didn't shake as I read it. My voice stayed calm while I helped Mrs. Jake pick out a scarf. The only sign that my husband of 10 years had just ended our marriage by text was a small tightening around my eyes. I waited until Mrs. Jake left with her purchase, wrapped in our silver gift paper. Then I replied to his message. Good luck. Name is Lily, I'm 37, and I just got the coldest goodbye message ever. Bob probably thought I'd be crying, heartbroken by his message. But instead, I was calmly closing my shop for the day. I had seen the warning signs for months. Late nights at work that didn't match his pay, new passwords on his phone, sudden interest in the gym, new clothes, trying to feel young again. 1. Months ago, I found a dinner receipt for 2 from a fancy restaurant on a night he said he was working. That same night, I opened a new bank account at a different bank. A week later, when he suggested combining our finances to make things easier, I smiled and agreed. I moved all my savings into the new account. The joint account he just emptied? I left just enough money in there to avoid suspicion, about 1 month's worth of regular deposits. The rest is safe. I also kept records of all the strange transactions he made over the past year. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. Don't bother begging. Kate and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Kate, the new receptionist at his office. I met her at the company Christmas party. I saw how she laughed too hard at his jokes and touched his arm when she thought no one was watching. She's young enough to be his daughter and probably thinks she's special. I didn't reply to that text either. I called my lawyer, the one I had spoken to 1 month ago when I saw hotel charges on our credit card. It's time, I said. He just made his move. The papers are ready, she replied. I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want him served in Seattle? No rush, I said. Let him think he's won. Then another text came from Bob. I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop? The boutique I built from nothing? The one that makes more money than his middle management job? The one whose profits I kept out of our joint accounts? I smiled. He had no idea what was coming. I thought about the official letters waiting for him in Seattle. Let him enjoy thinking he's in control. That night, I stayed at home. My home, the one I got from my grandmother and kept in my name, even though Bob kept asking me to add him to the deed. Another good decision. While organizing the documents for my lawyer, I found our wedding album. Bob looked so different back then, before his midlife crisis turned him into a version of himself I barely recognized. Now he wore shirts that were too tight for his softening belly, tried too hard to fit in with the 18-somethings at work, and used slang that sounded silly coming from a 42-year-old man. My phone buzzed again and again. More texts from Bob, each one more insulting than the last. I've been planning this for months. Kate understands me like you never did. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll meet someone your age. I already told my family. They agree. We just grew apart. It's nobody's fault. I took screenshots of every message and added them to my folder of evidence. Let him keep talking. My lawyer would love his clear confession, planning everything ahead and happily telling me he drained our account. Then one last message caught my eye. BTW, I used the joint card to pay for our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift. LOL. Perfect. I called the credit card company. This is Mrs. Sam, I said. I need to report some fraud and cancel a card right away. Of course, ma'am. Can you tell me which charges? Yes, I said. 2 first-class tickets to Seattle booked today. Hotel charges at the Royal Palm. And I need to remove my husband as an authorized user. Do you have proof of the fraud? She asked. Yes. I have text messages from my husband admitting he used our joint card to book a trip with his girlfriend after draining our bank account. I can send them to you. The woman stayed professional, but I could tell. She was pleased as she canceled the charges. Tomorrow, Bob and Kate would get to the airport and find out their tickets didn't work. Their hotel reservation would be gone too. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller. I actually laughed out loud. Did he really believe he had a right to the house my grandmother left me? Did his ego get so big that he forgot the house was in my name? Then another message. I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair deal for your half. My half? Of the business I built from scratch? The one I paid for, ran, and grew while he called it a hobby and complained I worked too much? I poured myself a glass of wine, the nice one I'd been saving for a special moment. This was it. Tomorrow, Bob would learn how property law and separate finances really work. But tonight, I was going to relax, enjoy the peace, and start thinking about what comes next. In the morning, I woke up to a bunch of angry texts from Bob. What did you do to the credit card? The airline says the tickets aren't valid. The hotel canceled our room. Answer me. I put my phone on silent and headed to my boutique. Wednesdays were always busy, and a new shipment of designer handbags had just arrived. Life keeps moving, even when your husband runs off with a receptionist young enough to be his daughter. Around noon, his mother called. Lily dear, she said, Bob told us everything. He said you were so controlling. That's why he left. And now you're being spiteful, ruining his travel plans. I put Anna on speaker while I worked on a window display. Did Bob tell you he emptied our joint account and used our credit card to buy tickets for himself and his girlfriend? I asked. There was a pause. Then she said, well, he said you gave him no choice, that you'd been cold and distant. Anna, I have the texts. Do you want me to read them to you? The one where he brags about taking our money, or the one where he makes fun of my age? Another pause. He did seem a little harsh. I told him that message wasn't okay. I appreciate the call, Anna. I've always liked you, but I think we should end this conversation here. My lawyer advised me to keep contact with Bob and his family to a minimum during the divorce. Divorce? Already? She said. Goodbye, Anna. By late afternoon, Bob's sister Sarah was already gossiping to mutual friends. Word got around that Bob and Kate were stuck at a cheap motel near the airport. Their Seattle plans were on hold. He tried using his personal credit cards, but they were maxed out, another sign I had noticed a while ago. Then my lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is set for Thursday, she said. Since we have proof that he emptied the joint account and used the credit card, we're in a strong position to freeze whatever assets are left. Has he been served yet? I asked. Not yet, she said, but he'll get the papers at his new motel address. By the way, she added, his girlfriend's social media posts have been very helpful. She's been sharing everything they're doing, including some pretty rude things about you. I smiled, thinking about the file I'd been building. A year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel bills, and texts that proved he'd planned this for a long time. Bob was so busy planning his big escape that he didn't think I'd notice, or prepare. Then my phone buzzed with another message from him. You think you're so clever, but I made copies of the boutique's financial records. Half of that business is mine. I sent that message straight to my lawyer and added it to the growing pile of Bob's mistakes. Let him find out the hard way what separate property and business ownership really mean. Sometimes the best kind of revenge is simply being ready. Thursday's emergency hearing was everything. It went better than I could have hoped. Bob showed up wearing clothes meant for someone much younger, tight designer jeans and a flashy blazer that screamed midlife crisis. Kate waited outside the courtroom, looking very young and out of place, under the bright courthouse lights. Inside, my lawyer presented everything we'd gathered. One by one, she laid out the proof. Bob's texts bragging about emptying our bank account, the credit card charges, and his long history of hiding expenses. It was all there, collected quietly over months. Your Honor, Bob's lawyer began. My client admits he made some poor choices, but Mrs. Sam has been cold and calculating. Calculating? My lawyer said. You mean careful. My client protected her separate assets and kept clear records of her husband's suspicious behavior. That's not cruel. That's smart business. The judge reviewed my documents, the deed to the house in my name only, the boutique's business papers, and the financial records proving I had always kept personal and business money separate, something Bob used to complain about. Mr. Sam, the judge said, turning to Bob, you admitted in a text that you emptied the joint account and used a shared credit card to take a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny this? Bob shifted in his seat. I just wanted a clean break. By committing financial fraud? The judge asked, raising an eyebrow. And now you're claiming ownership of property that clearly belongs to your wife? Bob's lawyer tried again. The business grew during their marriage. My client is entitled to part of it. The business was started before the marriage. My lawyer said, and Mrs. Sam kept business and personal finances completely separate. We have records of every dollar she earned or invested. I watched Bob's face. This wasn't the quick win he expected. He thought he could drain the accounts, run off with his girlfriend, and walk away with half my business. He never understood why I insisted on keeping things separate. He used to laugh at my careful bookkeeping, calling it over the top. The court finds clear evidence of financial misconduct, the judge announced. All shared assets are now frozen until the divorce is final. Mr. Sam is ordered to return all money taken from the joint account within 48 hours. But the money's gone, Bob protested. We spent it. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it, the judge said firmly. And Mr. Sam using joint funds for a trip with a girlfriend is not something the court takes lightly. Outside the courthouse, I overheard Kate asking Bob what they were going to do about Seattle now. His answer was lost under the sound of my heels on the marble floor as I walked away, back to the business he never understood or appreciated. Over the next few weeks, Bob tried everything. He said the boutique had been his idea, claimed he'd invested in it early on, even tried to say he'd been my business partner all along. But my records told the real story. Every claim he made was quickly proven false. He's getting desperate, my lawyer said. His girlfriend's social media shows they're now staying at her tiny studio apartment. Looks like living on a receptionist's salary isn't the dream life Bob expected. His family began calling too. Their tone had changed a lot since they first blamed me. We had no idea, his sister Sarah admitted. He told us you were cold and controlling, said he needed to get away. But then we saw his texts, how he bragged about taking your money. That's not the brother I thought I knew. His mother called again, this time crying. The things he said about your age, about replacing you with someone younger, I raised him better than that. At least I thought I did. I let their messages go to voicemail. Their support might have mattered a few weeks ago. Now it just felt like they were jumping ship when things got bad. Meanwhile, the boutique was thriving, ironically, thanks to the gossip. Word had spread, and women started coming in just to support me. Many left with more than they'd planned to buy. One of my exes tried the same thing, one customer said while buying a designer handbag. Thought he could take everything in the divorce. Men like that never expect us to outsmart them. Bob still sent texts. Sometimes angry, sometimes trying to sound sorry. You've ruined everything. I didn't mean to hurt you. You'll regret being so bitter. Can't we just talk? That business would be nothing without me. I never replied. I just forwarded them all to my lawyer and let Bob keep digging himself deeper. Through the grapevine, I heard Kate was starting to regret things. Living in a cramped apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't pay his own way wasn't the fun adventure she'd imagined. The age gap that seemed exciting when they were sneaking around in hotels now felt awkward and real. She's been posting about toxic relationships and learning from mistakes, my lawyer mentioned during a call. She also removed her relationship status this morning. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for Bob. Almost. But then I remembered his haha after he told me he emptied our account. The cruel jokes about my age. How sure he was that I'd fall apart without him. Instead of pity, I felt something else. Pride. Pride in how I had planned ahead. In my quiet strength. In how I protected myself while he underestimated me. The final divorce hearing told a much different story than the one Bob had imagined. The confidence was gone. He looked nervous and unsure. Kate wasn't even there. She'd moved on to someone. Closer to her own age, according to gossip at his office. Bob had shown up in his old clothes. That expensive wardrobe? Returned. Most likely to help pay back the money he stole from our joint account. Bob looked defeated. His lawyer looked exhausted, probably from trying to find some way around the clear records I'd kept of our separate finances. Your Honor, his lawyer said one last time, even though the documents show the business is separate property, my client supported his wife emotionally. That support helped the business grow. Emotional support? My lawyer replied. Like these texts where he calls her store a little shop, or these social media posts where he says it's just her hobby. The judge had heard enough. The final settlement showed the results of my planning. I kept my house, my business, and everything I had kept separate. Bob walked away with his personal things and his car, which was worth less than what he still owed on it. "You've destroyed me," he whispered as we walked out of the courtroom. "I'll have to move back in with my parents." "No, Bob," I said. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't take me down with you." His mother was waiting outside to drive him to his new home, back to his childhood bedroom at 42. The same man who mocked my age was now living with his mom again, while I went back to running my successful business. "You planned all of this," he said bitterly. "You knew this would happen." "No," I said calmly. "I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood the importance of keeping good records." His mother stepped between us. "That's enough, Bob. You've embarrassed yourself enough already." As they walked away, I heard her start scolding him. "What were you thinking? An 18-year-old? Emptying accounts? Sending awful texts?" I watched them head to the parking lot, and for the first time in a while, I felt real peace. Bob thought his cruel text had ended our story, but really all he did was trigger a plan I had quietly built over time. My phone buzzed, not from Bob, but from my boutique's website. More online orders were coming in, life was moving forward, just not in the direction he imagined. 4 months after the divorce was final, my boutique had grown enough to open a second location. The irony wasn't lost on me. Bob, who once called it a little shop, was struggling, while my business was booming. I had hired 2 new employees and launched an online store. It was starting to attract customers across the country. News about Bob slowly made its way to me through mutual friends. He had tried dating again, but women his age weren't interested in a man living with his parents. And younger women? They stayed away too, thanks to office gossip and a few warnings from Kate. Apparently, Kate had shared screenshots of Bob's desperate messages trying to win her back after she left him. She told her friends to steer clear. Things didn't go well for him at work either. HR had launched an investigation into his relationship with Kate, who had been his employee. As a result, he got a formal warning. The promotion he had been hoping for went to someone else, someone without a history of inappropriate office relationships. He tried to say it was age discrimination, Sarah told me during a surprise visit to the boutique. He said HR was punishing him for dating someone younger. They just added that complaint to his file. I hadn't expected to see his sister in my store, but her visit said a lot. Even Bob's own family had started to distance themselves from him. "No, we didn't support you at first," she said, gently touching a silk scarf. "He played the victim so well. But after seeing how he behaved, I'm ashamed we ever believed him." My lawyer kept me updated on Bob's continued attempts to challenge the divorce ruling. Every time the court denied his requests. He even tried to argue that the text about emptying our account was a joke. The judge asked if haha made theft legal, my lawyer said, laughing. Meanwhile, my boutique was doing better than ever. Local business magazines reached out, not to talk about my divorce, but to feature me as a smart businesswoman who protected what was hers. Young entrepreneurs contacted me for advice, asking how I kept my business and personal life separate. The best protection is preparation, I told one young woman who reminded me of Kate. And always trust your instincts. Sometimes Bob's mother would still call, usually after he'd made another bad choice. He tried online gambling, she sighed one day. Then he joined one of those pyramid schemes thinking he'd make quick money. Every time he tries to fix things, it just gets worse. She told me that she and his father offered to help him, but only if he took responsibility. Instead, he kept blaming everyone else. Me, Kate, his job, the judge. I listened, but kept my distance. Their family problems weren't mine anymore. My life had moved on. I was planning a 3rd boutique and thinking about adding a luxury accessories line. The only trace of Bob that remained in my life was a framed screenshot on my office wall, his final text before I blocked him. "Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age." Beneath that frame sat my newest business award, Proof that the best kind of revenge is simply building a successful life on your own. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted the grand opening of my third boutique. The event drew local media, but this time the story wasn't about a failed marriage. It was about a businesswoman growing her brand. Bob's betrayal had become nothing more than a distant memory, a side note in a much bigger, better story. Then, in the middle of the event, someone unexpected walked in. Kate. She looked younger than ever. Or maybe I just felt stronger now. Kate stood there, shifting nervously and holding her purse like it was a shield. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I believed everything he told me, that you were cold, controlling, and didn't support his dreams. But then I saw him do the same things to me when life got hard." I kept arranging the new sunglasses display. "Those weren't dreams, Kate," I said. "They were escapes. There's a big difference." She nodded. "I know that now." She hesitated, then added, "When you froze the accounts, he tried to move in with me. He thought my small apartment was just temporary. But after 1 week of him complaining about my closet space and hinting that I should take out a loan for a bigger place, I finally understood what you meant." I laughed. "Let me guess, he had big plans, but no real way to pay for them." "Exactly," she said. "Everything was going to be fine once his investments paid off. Once he got that promotion, once his crypto skyrocketed." She gave a small smile and shook her head. "I'm dating someone my own age now. We have student loans and a tiny apartment, but at least we're building something real." After she left, my assistant manager leaned over and whispered, "Was that the girlfriend?" "No," I said. "That was just another woman who learned the same lesson I did." I looked over at a young couple browsing through the handbags. "Speaking of lessons," I said, "let's go over your idea for expanding our accessories line." The boutique had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of independence, strength, and being prepared. Young business owners often came to me for advice. I always told them, protect your assets and trust your instincts. Then, Bob's mother called one last time. Not to complain about Bob, but to thank me. "You taught our family a hard but important lesson," she said. "About not excusing bad behavior. About the danger of always making excuses for cruelty. Bob's still living at home, still blaming everyone else. But we're done defending him. That's the legacy you've left us, understanding the difference between helping someone and enabling them." I thought about that as I reviewed plans for a third boutique. Bob had tried to tear me down, replace me with someone younger, and take half of what I built. Instead, he only pushed me to grow stronger and become more successful. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer. Bob filed another petition to change the settlement. The judge dismissed it immediately and made him pay court costs. Thought you'd enjoy that. I smiled, imagining him still in his childhood bedroom, trying to rewrite an ending that was sealed the moment he underestimated me. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting better. 3 years after Bob's cruel text message, I got invited to speak at a women's business conference. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal. It was about how to build and protect a successful business. My story had changed. What started as a warning had become something hopeful, an example of what's possible. During the Q&A session, a woman stood up and asked, "My husband says I'm being paranoid for keeping our finances separate. He says marriage means sharing everything. Am I wrong?" "My ex-husband said the same thing," I replied. "Right up until he tried to take half my business during our divorce. Trust your instincts. Protecting yourself isn't being paranoid. It's being smart. Then, my boutique had grown into a chain of 3 stores, each more successful than the last. The little shop Bob once mocked now employed 20 people and had been featured in several national magazines. Through mutual friends, I heard Bob had finally moved out of his parents' house. He was now renting a small apartment above someone's garage. His company had let him go during a restructuring, and he had to take a lower-paying job. His dating profile still claimed he was young at heart, though the photo was clearly old. Ironically, Kate had become a regular customer at my original boutique. She had gone back to school, earned a business degree, and started her own social media consulting company. You inspired me, she told me once. You showed me that a woman can build something real instead of falling for empty promises. In my office, I kept Bob's old text message framed, not to feel angry, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. Below it was a sign that said, "Success is the best revenge." At the 3-year anniversary of my first boutique, I gave a short speech to thank my staff and loyal customers. That small shop had become the center of a growing business empire. I was surprised to see Bob's mother there. I hadn't invited her, but she waited until the crowd thinned before coming over. "I saw Bob yesterday," she said, smoothing the designer dress she'd bought from my store. "He was going on about his glory days, about the life he could have had. He still doesn't get it. He didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away." I thought about that message he sent me. The one where he laughed while telling me he drained our bank account. The way he assumed I'd fall apart. He thought I would fall apart without him. That I'd beg, break down, and prove him right. That I was desperate. But instead, I built something stronger than before. Every new boutique was proof of what women can do when they stop shrinking themselves to make insecure men feel bigger. The young saleswoman I'd hired last month, also named Kate, by chance, walked over to ask a question about the new inventory system I'd set up. As I explained it to her, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the store window. What I saw wasn't a woman getting older. It was a woman who had gotten wiser, stronger, and more successful. The cruel message Bob sent 3 years ago was supposed to be the end of my story. But instead, it became the beginning. Not just for me, but for every woman who's heard my story and realized she deserves more than being part of someone else's midlife crisis. She deserves better, because she is better.
"Don't you want to try the coffee I made just for you, honey?" my husband Larry asked. He smiled, but something about it felt strange. It didn't reach his eyes. I was sitting at my sister-in-law Isabella's fancy dining table in her home in Chattanooga. We were all gathered there for our monthly family brunch. The coffee cup in front of me had a weird smell, almost like metal. It made my stomach feel uneasy. My name is Sophia, and I'm 31 years old. I never thought I'd ever wonder if my own husband might be trying to poison me. But after 4 years of marriage and getting accidentally sick so many times, I had learned to be careful, especially around Isabella. She always seemed to plan things that ended with me either feeling sick or embarrassed. And she always smiled sweetly, just like Larry was doing now. "How sweet of you," I said, forcing a smile, while my mind tried to make sense of what was happening. The smell from the coffee was strange, nothing like normal coffee. It reminded me of the tea I drank at Isabella's house last month, the one that sent me to urgent care. The doctors never figured out what made me sick, and Isabella swore she made the tea just like she always does. Isabella was watching me closely from across the table, stirring her own cup, which she hadn't touched. "Larry has become quite the coffee expert lately," she said with a smirk. "He's been practicing different ways to make it, just for you." The way she said "for you" gave me goosebumps. I had noticed Larry spending more time at Isabella's house recently. He said they were planning a surprise for our anniversary, but something didn't feel right. There were whispered talks that stopped when I walked in, and strange texts I happened to see on his phone. And now, this odd-smelling coffee. I raised the cup and pretended to sip, watching both of them closely. Larry and Isabella exchanged a quick look, and that glance told me everything I needed to know. I picked up my phone and acted like I had a message. I stood up quickly. "Oh, look at that. I need to make a quick work call. Isabella, do you mind if I use your study?" As I walked past her place at the table, I pretended to trip. In that moment, I quietly switched our coffee cups while pretending to catch my balance. "I'm so sorry," I said, standing up straight again. "I'm such a klutz sometimes." Isabella gave me a tight smile and waved it off. "Just try not to break anything in the study," she said. I nodded and rushed out, my heart beating fast. From the doorway of the study, I could still see the table. Now I just had to wait. I watched as Isabella lifted the coffee cup to her lips. My stomach twisted. Part of me wanted to stop her, to shout a warning. But I needed to know the truth. I'd spent too many nights in the ER, too many hours in pain, always after eating or drinking something at their house. It hadn't always been this way. When I first met Larry at a friend's wedding 4 years ago, he was kind and charming. Isabella seemed nice too. She invited me to family events and even helped plan our wedding. But looking back, the warning signs were there. She would accidentally spill things on me during important events. When she helped cook, my food always seemed to taste a little off. At first, it was small things, an upset stomach, a slight allergic reaction. Larry always had a reason. Maybe it was something you ate earlier, or you're probably getting sick. But over time, I started to see the pattern. The worst was 3 months ago. I ate breakfast at their house and ended up in the hospital. The doctors found something strange in my system, but couldn't figure out what it was. Larry told everyone it must have been old medicine I had taken by mistake. Now, I stood in the study doorway, holding the frame tightly as I watched. Isabella took another sip of the coffee. Larry was busy on his phone, looking relaxed. My own coffee cup, the one I never drank from, sat untouched on the table, cold. The coffee cup was still where I left it. That strange, metallic smell hung in the air, making me shiver. I noticed a small shake in Isabella's hand as she set the cup down. Her face had gone pale. "Larry," she said, her voice unsteady. "Something's wrong." Larry looked up, confused at first. Then his face changed. His eyes went wide with horror when he realized which cup Isabella had used. He jumped up so fast he knocked over his chair. "Isabella, what's happening?" he asked, panicked. Her hands were shaking badly now. I don't feel right," she said, trying to stand. But she stumbled, grabbing the edge of the table to keep from falling. "Larry, what did you put in that coffee?" I stepped out of the study. My phone was already recording. Larry was beside Isabella now, his face pale. "That wasn't supposed to be your cup," he whispered. The room was so quiet that everyone heard him. Isabella's eyes went wide, realizing the truth. "Call an ambulance," she gasped, sliding to the floor. "Please." "I can't." I called 911, my hands calm even though everything around me was falling apart. "Emergency services?" "Yes, we need an ambulance at 1558 Maple Grove Drive," I said clearly, keeping my phone recording in the other hand. "My sister-in-law is having a serious reaction to something in her coffee. She's still awake but shaking badly." As I spoke to the dispatcher, Isabella looked at me. The usual cold look in her eyes was gone, replaced by real fear. "Sophia," she gasped. "You switched the cups, you knew." "Help is on the way," the dispatcher said. "Please stay on the line." Larry was panicking. "Isabella, what's happening?" "It wasn't meant for." "Shut up, Larry." Isabella snapped, her voice sharp through the pain. For a moment, her anger was stronger than her fear. "This is your fault," she cried. "You said it would just make her sick enough to miss the board meeting next week. You promised it couldn't be traced." My blood went cold. The board meeting. I was supposed to present a proposal for a huge client. The same client Isabella had been chasing for months at her firm, which just happened to compete with mine. Suddenly, everything made sense. "The tea last month," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "And the breakfast 3 months ago. Those weren't accidents, were they?" Isabella's face twisted in pain as another wave hit her. "The tea was supposed to keep you home the day you presented the Johnson contract," she admitted. "But you went anyway." She bent over, clutching her stomach. "Larry said, he said we just needed to make you look bad. So clients would think you weren't reliable." Outside, I could hear the sound of sirens getting closer. Larry backed away from us, looking nervous. "Isabella, stop. You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," she snapped, though her words were starting to slur. "We've been planning this for months, ever since Sophia started doing better than me at client meetings. You were supposed to make sure she drank the coffee today." The paramedics rushed through the front door. I stepped aside to let them through. As they lifted Isabella onto a stretcher, I stopped the recording on my phone and quickly sent the video to my private email. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer. Larry stood frozen, watching everything fall apart. I'll ride with her to the hospital, I told the paramedics firmly. I want to make sure my sister-in-law gets the treatment she needs. I looked Larry straight in the eye. And I'm sure the doctors will be very interested in learning exactly what was in that coffee. At the emergency room in Chattanooga General Hospital, things were hectic as doctors worked to help Isabella. I waited in the lobby, holding my phone tightly, the recording of her confession still saved and ready. Her trembling voice, the fear in her eyes, it was all the proof I needed. This wasn't just in my head. I hadn't imagined it. Family of Isabella Sermon? A nurse called out. I stood up. Larry was nowhere to be seen. He had mumbled something about parking the car almost 15 minutes ago and hadn't come back. I'm her sister-in-law, I said, stepping forward. I followed the nurse through the double doors. How is she? I asked. She's stable now, the nurse said seriously. But we found some dangerous toxins in her system. The doctor needs to speak with you about something strange in her blood tests. Dr. Madison, a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, was standing outside Isabella's room. Mrs. Bennett, she said, can you tell me exactly what happened before your sister-in-law got sick? I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. I think you should hear this first. I played the recording from brunch. As the doctor listened, her expression changed from concern to shock. This is very serious, she said, making notes on her tablet. The substance we found doesn't end up in coffee by accident. This looks like someone put it there on purpose. Just then, Larry appeared at the end of the hallway. His face was pale and sweaty. He had clearly heard what the doctor said. Sophia, he began, stepping toward me. Let me explain. Stay back, Dr. Madison said firmly as she pressed the nurse's call button. Security to room 355, please. Larry raised his hands in the air. This is all a misunderstanding. Isabella was confused. She didn't know what she was saying. Really? I said, pulling out more evidence. Then what about these messages between you and Isabella? The ones where you talked about making sure I wouldn't make it to the Henderson presentation? His face went even paler. You went through my phone? Yes, I said. After I found something strange in your desk drawer. And I saved the texts. I turned to Dr. Madison. I've been in the hospital 3 times in the past 7 months with mystery illnesses. Can you check if what made me sick matches what you found in Isabella's system? Dr. Madison narrowed her eyes. We'll need to do some tests, but yes. And security will make sure your husband stays available for questioning. 3 guards showed up and stood beside Larry. He looked completely shaken, the calm and confident version of him gone. Isabella and we were just trying to help you, he mumbled. You were working too hard taking all the big clients. Isabella said if we could get you to take a break. By poisoning me?
I said.
My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding. My hands were shaking with anger. How long have you been doing this? Was it you who messed with my food at the Christmas party too? Larry didn't say a word. His silence told me everything I needed to know. Behind him, I could see into Isabella's hospital room. She was hooked up to machines, looking scared and weak. The confident look she always had was gone, replaced by fear. She knew the truth had finally caught up with her. Detective Lauren is on her way, Dr. Madison said quietly. She'll want to get statements from everyone involved. I nodded, feeling oddly calm. The truth was finally out. There was no hiding now. Detective Lauren arrived less than an hour later. She had a strong presence that filled the quiet hospital hallway. She was an experienced investigator who worked on cases involving family abuse. She listened closely as I played the brunch recording and showed her the text messages. Mrs. Bennett, she said while reviewing her notes, you mentioned earlier hospital visits. Can you tell me more about those? I pulled out my phone again and opened a document I had been keeping for months. The first time was in February, after dinner at Isabella's house. I had bad stomach pain and felt dizzy. The second was in April, that was the tea incident. And the third was in June, after breakfast with them. My voice stayed calm as I explained. Each time, the symptoms were similar, but just different enough that the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. The detective narrowed her eyes as she looked over my notes. I had recorded all the dates, symptoms, and what I ate or drank. "You've been keeping records?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out another phone. I also started carrying a backup phone with a different number. I used it to secretly record conversations when I was around them. I have several recordings where Isabella and Larry talk about what they were doing. They don't say everything clearly, but it's obvious what they meant. In one of the recordings, Isabella's voice came through clearly. "The Henderson account is worth millions, Larry. We can't let her ruin everything we've worked for. Just stick to the plan. A few days of illness should be enough." Larry's reply was just as bad. "I've got something stronger this time. She won't make it to the presentation." Detective Lauren's face turned serious as she listened to the recording. Through the window of Isabella's hospital room, I saw her awake now. She looked nothing like the confident woman from brunch. Now, she looked scared. "The hospital is running toxicology tests," the detective said. "Dr. Madison has already found several chemicals in her system that don't occur naturally. We'll also need to collect samples from your home." Suddenly, we heard a loud noise down the hallway. Larry was arguing with the security guards. His voice was desperate and loud. "I need to talk to my wife," he shouted. "Sophia, please. You don't understand. We were trying to protect you." Detective Lauren stepped in front of me. "Mr. Bennett, you're not helping yourself," she said firmly. "We already have evidence this was planned." Larry let out a dry, bitter laugh that echoed in the hallway. "We were just trying to slow her down. She was overworking, taking every big account. Isabella said if we could make her take a break." "By poisoning her?" the detective snapped. "That's not protecting someone. That's attempted murder." Larry turned pale. "Murder? No, that's not what we didn't mean." "Then what did you mean to do?" I asked, my voice calm. "When you put something in my coffee this morning, what did you expect would happen?" Larry didn't answer. His silence said it all. Behind him, I saw Isabella watching us through the hospital room window. Her face was frozen in fear and deep thought. I could tell she was already trying to figure out a way to explain it all, maybe make it seem like they were just trying to help me, not hurt me. "We'll need both of their phones," Detective Lauren told the guards. "And I want officers at both doors. No one leaves until we have the full toxicology results." Dr. Madison walked into Isabella's room, holding a tablet and looking serious. She had the test results. Detective Lauren and I followed her in. While Larry stayed outside with the guards, Isabella tried to sit up straighter in her hospital bed. But her body was still shaking a little. Dr. Madison looked at her tablet and spoke in a calm, serious voice. "The toxicology report shows high levels of several substances in your system. The most worrying one is a chemical usually used in lab testing. It's not something regular people should have." Isabella's face turned pale. "That's impossible," she whispered. Larry said it was just something mild. "Mild symptoms?" Detective Lauren said sharply, opening her notebook. "Like the ones your sister-in-law has been having for the past 7 months. Just then, another detective walked into the room, holding an evidence bag. "We found these in Mr. Bennett's desk at the Sermon Marketing Office," he said. Inside the bag were several small bottles with medical labels and notes about dosages and side effects. My knees felt weak as I realized what this meant. "You were keeping records," I said, shocked. Like I was part of an experiment. "It wasn't like that," Isabella said quickly, but her voice shook. "We just had to track what worked. The first few times didn't do enough. You kept going to meetings anyway." "So you gave her more each time?" Detective Lauren said, looking through the bottles. "Did you know these chemicals can be deadly in higher amounts?" The room went quiet. Through the window, I saw Larry slump into a chair in the hallway, his head in his hands. "The Henderson account," I said slowly, as the truth came together. "It wasn't just about one presentation, was it? That client asked for me personally. You wanted me gone for good." Isabella's face twisted with both anger and fear. "You were ruining everything. I worked for years to build that client list. Then you show up, and suddenly everyone wants you instead." "And Larry said he could fix it," I said. "By killing me." The words filled the room like a heavy cloud. "We didn't mean to," Isabella began, but Dr. Madison cut her off. "The amount that was in today's coffee," she said, looking straight at Isabella, was much higher than what we found in past hospital visits. If Mrs. Bennet had actually drunk it, the result could have been serious, possibly deadly. Detective Lauren turned to the other officer. Get a full search warrant for their homes and offices, and contact the drug company listed on these bottles. We need to know how they got their hands on this stuff. Isabella leaned back into her pillows, all the fight gone from her. Her voice was barely a whisper now. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Larry kept saying we just needed one more try. I stepped closer to her hospital bed, my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking. Every time I got sick, every meeting I missed, every client I lost, you were both there, watching, taking notes on how your poison was working on me. What kind of people does that make you? The room went completely silent. Outside, I could hear Larry being read his rights as more police officers arrived. Isabella just stared at her hands. She couldn't look me in the eye. I turned away from her and looked at the detective. I'm ready to give my formal statement now, I said. The trial lasted for weeks, but it felt like years. I was in court every day, watching as the prosecution carefully explained everything Larry and Isabella had done. The evidence was strong. The bottles found in Larry's desk, the notes tracking each time I got sick, the recordings, and the text messages where they planned it all. What stayed with me most was how different they looked during the trial. Isabella, always so confident and proud, now looked small and tired in the defendant's chair. Larry couldn't even look at me. He kept his eyes on the floor the entire time. Expert witnesses explained how dangerous the substances were. Dr. Madison gave the strongest testimony. She showed how the doses had increased over time, proving they meant to hurt me more and more with each attempt. A representative from the drug company confirmed that Larry got the chemicals through a college friend who worked in their research department. This wasn't just about business, the prosecutor said in her final words. This was a carefully planned effort to hurt Mrs. Bennet. It grew more dangerous over time and could have ended in death. When the verdict was read, I didn't feel happy, just relieved. Both Larry and Isabella were found guilty of attempted murder and conspiracy. The judge's words echoed through the quiet courtroom. These were planned actions, done to a family member over a long period of time. That deserves the highest possible sentence. I watched as they were led away in handcuffs. I thought about how greed and jealousy had changed 3 people I once trusted into strangers. They lost everything, their business, their good names, and their freedom, just to try to bring me down. I stood at the podium at the Chattanooga Business Leaders Conference, ready to give the main speech. The moment felt full of meaning. This was the kind of success Isabella had tried so hard to keep me from reaching. The Henderson account, the one she and Larry had wanted so badly, had brought in several more major clients. Now, I was known as one of the top marketing professionals in the area. Success isn't just about talent or working hard. I began, looking out at the crowd. It's also about honesty, about building real relationships based on trust. I paused for a moment, letting that message sink in. Sometimes, the biggest threats to our success come from people we know, but getting through those hard times makes us stronger. After the speech, several young professionals came up to me to ask for advice. One woman, her eyes full of determination, asked how I had stayed calm through everything that happened. I focused on what I could control, I told her. I trusted my instincts, gathered proof, and didn't let fear stop me from going after what I wanted. That evening, I got an email from the Henderson client. They were renewing their contract for another 4 years. I smiled, thinking about how different things could have been if I hadn't trusted my gut that day at brunch. The local newspaper had printed a small story that morning. It was about Isabella and Larry starting their prison sentences. I didn't read it. Instead, I focused on writing a proposal for a new client. Because the best kind of revenge isn't about getting even. It's about moving forward and succeeding, even when others try to stop you.
The conference room was full of noise as people chatted and moved around. I checked my phone, and just then, it lit up with a call. It was from Scott. I stepped out into the hallway, expecting a normal conversation. Maybe he would ask how my trip was going or when I'd be home. But what I heard instead stopped me in my tracks. Scott's voice sounded cold, even a little proud. "I'm divorcing you," he said. "I already sold the apartment, so you'll need to figure out where you're going to live. Enjoy that." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I just stood there stunned. I couldn't believe how heartless he sounded. There was no kindness, no regret, nothing. It was almost like he enjoyed telling me. My hand gripped the phone tighter as I tried to understand what he had just said. "You sold the apartment?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Yeah," he replied with a dry laugh. "Charlotte and I need the money to start our life together. She deserves better than that tiny place anyway." Charlotte. The name hit me like a punch. I had suspected for a while that someone else was involved. Scott had been working late a lot, going on unexpected trips, and growing more distant. I had felt something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe it. Hearing him say her name like it was nothing made my chest burn with anger. It was like I was just a problem in his new life with her. "Sounds good," I said, keeping my voice even. There was no way I was going to let him hear me cry or fall apart. He wasn't going to get that satisfaction. "My name is Judy. Before that call, I thought I was married to someone I could trust." Scott and I had been together for 7 years. Our life wasn't always perfect, but I believed we were a team. We had worked hard to buy our apartment, a small but lovely one-bedroom in the city. I fell in love with it the first time I walked through the door. To me, it wasn't just a place to live, it was our home. It was where we had built our life together. At least that's what I thought. Looking back, I now realize there were signs, small things I chose to ignore. Scott had been distant and dismissive for a while. I made excuses for his cold behavior. I told myself he was stressed from work or that he just needed space. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Now, standing alone in that hallway with the phone still in my hand, everything was clear. The man I thought I knew didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. But one thing was sure. I had to start over, without him, and without the home we once shared. Whenever I asked Scott about our money or how we were doing financially, he would just smile and kiss me, brushing off my concerns. He always acted confident, like everything was under control. I used to think that confidence came from him being smart with money, but now I understand it was something else. He wasn't being honest. He just knew how to charm me so I wouldn't ask more questions. He knew how to distract me so he could keep control. The rest of that day felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. Everything around me was a blur. I sat through meetings with clients, pretending to listen and nodding at the right times, but my mind was somewhere else. All I could think about was what Scott had done. He thought he had won. He believed he could just take everything from me, sell the apartment I had worked so hard to make into a home, and walk away without any consequences. But there was something he didn't know. He didn't realize that the apartment wasn't in both our names anymore. Months earlier, we had refinanced the mortgage. When we did that, I had the ownership of the apartment changed to my name only. Scott didn't think much of it at the time. He just signed the papers because it meant we would get a lower interest rate. He never asked about the details. He didn't read what he was signing. His mistake was going to be the very thing that saved me. By the time I got back to my hotel room that evening, I wasn't shocked anymore. I felt strong. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. If Scott wanted a fight, fine, because now I was ready to fight back. And I was going to win. The first person I called was Madison. She's not only my lawyer, but also a good friend I've trusted for years. I explained everything to her slowly, making sure not to miss a single detail, even though my heart was beating fast the whole time. "He sold the apartment?" Madison asked, clearly surprised. "Does he even know he can't do that without your permission?" "Apparently not," I said, starting to smile a little. "He thinks the money is already his. He's probably planning a new life with Charlotte. Right now," Madison let out a dry laugh. "Well, he's in for a surprise. That sale isn't legal. You can prove the apartment is yours alone. And if he took money from the buyer, he could be in serious trouble. That's fraud." Hearing the word fraud made me feel something I hadn't felt all day. Hope. Maybe even a little satisfaction. What? do we need to do? I asked. First, we'll let the buyer know the sale isn't valid, Madison said. Then we'll send Scott a formal letter explaining the legal consequences. And if he tries anything else, we'll take him to court. I hung up the phone with a clear plan and a strong heart. Scott had made a big mistake. And now I was ready to make things right. I felt a strange kind of peace wash over me. Scott thought he had tricked me. He believed he had all the power and that I was left confused and helpless. But the truth was very different. He had set himself up for a big fall, and he didn't even see it coming. The rest of my work trip passed quickly. I pushed my feelings aside and focused completely on my job. I stayed busy, pouring my energy into my tasks. Yes, the betrayal still hurt, but I didn't let it control me. Instead, I found strength in the idea of taking back my life. I imagined the look on Scott's face when he realized that I wasn't as weak as he thought. That image gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time, a real sense of purpose. When I boarded the plane to go home, I felt ready. Ready to deal with Scott. Ready to tell the truth and stop hiding. Ready to start over. This wasn't just about getting even. It was about getting my power back. It was time to move forward without him. During the flight, I had plenty of time to think. I looked back at how things had fallen apart. Scott had been so full of himself, he didn't even try to hide what he was doing. It was like he thought I was just something in his way, something to get rid of so he could be free. But instead of getting angry again, I focused on what I would do next. He thought I had no options, but he didn't know I had already made smart choices that would protect me. Without realizing it, I had been preparing for this moment for months. As soon as the plane landed, I called Madison. "I'm back," I said, dragging my suitcase off the luggage belt. "What's the next step?" "We've already told the buyer about the problem," she said, her voice calm and professional. "They were shocked, as you can imagine. They're not happy with Scott, but they're willing to help us, which is good." "And Scott?" I asked. "I sent the formal letter to his email this morning," she replied. "It clearly explains that the sale is illegal, that you own the apartment, and that what he did could be considered fraud. He hasn't replied yet, but I'm sure he's angry." Good, I thought. Let him be angry. Let him worry. When I got home, the apartment was strangely quiet. Scott's things were still there. His jacket hung over a chair and his shoes were by the door like always. But something had changed. The place didn't feel the same. It felt like the space had shifted. It no longer felt like our home. It felt like mine. I was ready to start fresh, and this time, on my terms. I took a deep breath and set my suitcase down. I knew that sooner or later I would have to face Scott, and I was right. He stormed into the apartment that evening. His face was red with anger, and he was holding his phone tightly in one hand. "What is this?" he yelled, waving the letter Madison had sent him. "Are you telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No, Scott," I said calmly, folding my arms. "It's not. The apartment deed has been in my name for months. You can't sell something you don't own." He froze. His face changed from angry to confused and shocked. "What are you talking about?" he asked. I had already taken the deed out of the file earlier, just in case. I held it up for him to see. After we refinanced the mortgage, I had the deed put in my name only. You signed the papers, remember? Or did you just glance at them like you always do? He didn't say anything for a moment. Then his face twisted into a sneer. "You think you're clever, huh? This doesn't change anything. I already made a deal. You're going to look stupid when it all falls apart." I looked him straight in the eye. "The sale is already canceled, Scott. The buyer knows the truth, and they're ready to take legal action if you don't give their money back." I stepped closer and lowered my voice. "And if you've already spent any of that deposit money, you're in even more trouble." For the first time, Scott looked unsure. "You don't know what you're talking about," he mumbled, looking away from me. "Oh, but I do," I replied, keeping my voice calm and firm. "You've treated me like I'm clueless for years, but I've been paying attention. And now, you have to deal with the results of your choices." He started pacing around the room, clearly upset. "This is crazy. You're blowing things out of proportion. You can't just throw me out. I raised an eyebrow. Actually, I can. This apartment is mine legally. I'm letting you stay here for now, but only because I'm being nice. Use the time to figure out where you're going next. But let me be clear, I'm not the one leaving. Over the next few days, Scott changed. His anger turned into panic. He called me over and over, leaving voicemails that jumped between begging me to talk and threatening me. Meanwhile, Madison worked quietly in the background, making sure everything was handled properly. The buyer backed out of the deal, angry at Scott for wasting their time and money. Madison also started preparing the divorce paperwork. You're in a strong position, Judy, she told me during one of our meetings. Scott has no power here. With the sale canceled and possible fraud charges ahead, he's the one in real trouble now. He'll have to cooperate if he wants to avoid even more trouble, Madison had said. Her words made me feel better, but they also reminded me of something painful. I had let Scott control my life for years. I had ignored the way he brushed me off and acted like he knew everything. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. But now I saw how much I had given up to keep the peace. I was done doing that. I was ready to take back control. One evening, my best friend Kelly came over to help me clean up and reorganize the apartment. We started packing up Scott's things, putting them neatly into boxes and stacking them in the corner of the living room. How's he handling all of this? She asked with a grin, holding up one of his flashy ties. Not well, I said, laughing a little. He still thinks he can talk his way out of it, but I'm not giving in. Good, she said, tossing the tie into the box. He doesn't deserve any more of your space or your time. I nodded, feeling thankful. For a long time, I felt alone in my marriage. I was the one carrying the emotional weight and the financial responsibilities, while Scott acted like he was the hero. But now, I had support. I had friends who were really there for me, and that changed everything. The final moment of my plan came the day Scott brought Charlotte to the apartment. I was sitting at the dining table, going over some paperwork, when they walked in like they owned the place. Charlotte looked around with a smug smile, her arm wrapped around Scott's. So this is where we're staying, she said, her voice full of confidence. I stood up. My heart was beating fast, but I didn't let it shake me. I looked straight at her. No, I said firmly. This is where Scott was staying. You won't be staying here at all. Charlotte's smile faded. She looked at Scott, confused. He looked just as surprised. What is this? He asked, his voice rising. This, I said, motioning to the apartment around me, is my home. Not yours, not hers. And definitely not a hotel for you to move into after betraying me. Charlotte didn't say anything, but her face turned cold. Scott looked like he was going to explode. You can't do this, he shouted. You're being unreasonable. I didn't flinch. No, Scott. What's unreasonable is thinking you could sell my home, take the money, and leave me with nothing. You're lucky I haven't pressed criminal charges yet, he stood in the doorway, face red, fists clenched. Charlotte crossed her arms, clearly uncomfortable. You're being ridiculous, Judy, he said, his voice now full of panic. You can't just kick me out of my own home. I looked him in the... It's not your home anymore. I took a step forward, keeping my voice calm but firm. This is my home, Scott. The apartment has been in my name for months, and you know that. You signed the paperwork without even reading it, like you always do. So no, this isn't your home anymore. Charlotte looked at him, her hand tightening around her purse. Wait, what is she talking about? She asked sharply. You told me this was your apartment. You said you sold it. Scott flinched and tried to brush it off. It's complicated, I'll take care of it. Oh, it's not complicated at all, I said, stepping closer. You tried to sell a place that doesn't belong to you. That sale isn't legal, Scott, and right now you have no ground to stand on. Charlotte's face changed. Her confident look faded. Wait, you mean the money? The money you said you had? She stopped mid-sentence, her voice getting louder. Oh my God. Did you lie about that too? Charlotte, let me explain, Scott said quickly, holding up his hands. No, I said, cutting him off. I'll explain. Scott tried to sell this apartment behind my back. He thought he could take the money and leave me with nothing. What he didn't know was that I already had the deed changed to my name months ago. So not only did he fail to sell it, but he also committed fraud by pretending he could. Charlotte's mouth opened and closed like she didn't know what to say. Fraud, she whispered, stepping away from him. Are you serious? Yes, fraud, I said, folding my arms. And I'm ready to press charges if he doesn't pack his things and leave by the end of the day. Finally, Scott's confident act broke. You can't do this, Judy, he said, his voice now begging. We've been together for 7 years. You can't just kick me out. You kicked me out the moment you made that phone call, I replied, my voice growing cold. You told me you were divorcing me and laughed while saying I'd need to find somewhere else to live. You didn't just betray me, Scott. You tried to destroy me. So don't stand there pretending to be the victim. Charlotte stepped back, again, her eyes jumping between the two of us. This is insane, she muttered, clutching her purse. You didn't tell me any of this, Scott. You said everything was under control. He turned to her, looking desperate. Charlotte, I can fix this. I just need... She cut him off, raising her hand. Don't. Just don't. I'm not getting involved in your mess. Without another word, she turned around and walked out, leaving him standing there, stunned and speechless. I couldn't help but smile a little as the door closed behind her. Looks like you're on your own. I turned back to Scott and said, Now let's talk about what happens next. He sank into the couch and put his face in his hands. Judy, please, I messed up, I know that. But you don't have to do this. You're right, I said, walking to the kitchen and picking up a folder. I placed it on the coffee table in front of him. I don't have to do this, but I am doing it. These are the divorce papers. My lawyer has already prepared everything. I suggest you sign them soon. The faster you do, the faster we can both move on. He looked at the folder, his face pale. You really hate me that much? Hate you? I gave a bitter laugh. No, Scott. I don't hate you. I actually feel sorry for you. You had everything. Someone who loved you, a home we worked hard to build, and you threw it all away because you couldn't see past your own pride. I stood tall. My heart was racing, but I didn't back down. I want you out of here by the end of the day. Pack your things and figure out where you'll go. This is the last time I'll show you any kindness. He opened his mouth to argue, but then stopped. His shoulders dropped, and he gave in. Fine, he said quietly. I'll go. Good, I said as I walked toward the door. And don't even think about pulling any more tricks. Madison, my lawyer, is handling everything. Now. If you cross the line again, I won't hesitate to let the courts deal with it. I opened the door. Scott slowly stood up and grabbed his coat. He didn't say anything or look at me as he walked out. His steps were slow and heavy. For a moment, I felt a little sad. Not for him, but for the life we could have had if he had been the man I thought he was. But that feeling passed quickly. What came next was relief. I closed the door and locked it with the new key I had made. This was my home now. And no one, especially not Scott, was going to take it from me again. Silence in the apartment after he left was loud. For the first time in years, I could actually breathe. The space felt different now. It wasn't full of his presence, his attitude, or his lies. It was just me. Me, the home I had built, and the quiet, powerful feeling that I had won. Not just against Scott, but against every doubt I ever had about standing up for myself. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking at all the empty spaces where Scott's stuff used to be. His giant gaming chair was gone. The framed sports jerseys he had hung everywhere were no longer on the walls. Even that loud, ugly coffee table he insisted on keeping was finally out of my sight. Without all his clutter, the apartment looked brighter and cleaner. It felt like it belonged to me again. That evening, Kelly came over with takeout food and a bottle of wine. Is he really gone? She asked, flopping onto the couch with a dramatic sigh. Gone and not coming back, I said, handing her a glass of wine. I gave him until the end of the day to pack up his things. He didn't argue. Kelly raised her glass. To fresh starts and well-earned victories. I smiled and clinked my glass with hers. The stress of the past week began to fade, little by little. To never letting anyone walk all over me again, I said. Over the next few days, I started taking back my apartment piece by piece. I moved the furniture around, put my favorite art in the living room, and added little touches that made me happy. Candles, plants, cozy pillows. It wasn't just about decorating. It was about making this space reflect who I really was. It was about turning it into my home, not a place filled with things Scott had picked or forced on me. Madison, my lawyer, called with updates on the legal side of things. Her voice was strong and confident, which made me feel even more sure of myself. The fraud charges are off the table since the buyer isn't pushing forward, she explained. But the divorce is moving along smoothly. Once Scott signs the papers, you'll officially be free. That word, free, made my chest feel tight. It wasn't just about the end of the marriage. It was about letting go of years of pain, anger, and self-doubt. I had spent so long feeling stuck, like I had to accept whatever little bit of love or respect Scott gave me. But now, that weight was finally lifting. Scott tried to contact me a few times. His messages were a mix of weak apologies and attempts to make me feel bad. I made a mistake. One message read, "Can't we at least talk?" Another said, "You're going to ruin me, Judy. Is that what you want?" I didn't respond. For once, I wasn't going to spend my energy trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. Scott had made his choices. Now he had to live with the results. By the end of the week, the apartment felt like a whole new place. Warm, peaceful, and completely mine. I sat on the couch with a cup of tea looking out at the city lights. I thought about everything that had happened. Scott's betrayal had hurt, yes. But it had also opened my eyes. For too long, I believed I didn't deserve better, that I had to settle for whatever Scott gave me. But not anymore. Now I knew the truth. I wasn't just getting my apartment back. I was getting myself back. I was getting my life back. A month later, everything looked different. The apartment didn't change because of a big renovation. It changed because of how it felt. It finally felt like me. Every corner showed my taste, my personality, and the freedom I had found. Without Scott's mess and his controlling presence, the whole place felt lighter. It felt peaceful. The divorce was going smoothly. Madison took care of everything with care and skill. Scott didn't have a chance to cause trouble or delay things. He signed the papers without a fight. Maybe he realized he had no power left. There was no big argument, no last-minute apology, no begging. It was a clean, quiet ending. A little sad, but mostly, it felt like a deep breath of relief. One afternoon, while I was going through old papers, I found a photo of Scott and me from the early days of our relationship. We were smiling, our arms around each other, looking so hopeful. I looked at it for a moment, letting the memories come back. There had been good times. Back then, I really believed we were building something strong. But those moments had faded, buried under years of hurt, lies, and control. I put the photo in an envelope and placed it in a drawer. I didn't want to display it, but I wasn't ready to throw it away either. It was a part of my story, but it didn't define who I was anymore. To celebrate the final divorce, Kelly and I went out for dinner and drinks at a rooftop bar downtown. "You're glowing," she said, raising her glass. "Single life looks good on you." I laughed, feeling truly happy for the first time in years. "It's not just being single," I said. "It's the freedom. I'm finally living life by my rules." We raised our glasses and toasted to that. As the night went on, I felt proud of myself. I had gone through one of the hardest experiences of my life and came out stronger. I wasn't just surviving. I was growing and becoming someone I was proud of. Back at home, I started thinking about the future. The apartment had become more than just a place to live. It was a symbol of everything I had taken back for myself. Still, I knew I wouldn't stay there forever. One day, I'd move to a new place, somewhere without any reminders of Scott or our past. But for now, I was happy. I was free. And I was ready to make the most of every moment in the space I had made my own. That night, I curled up on the couch and felt a deep sense of peace. I thought about that phone call, how Scott had laughed, so sure he had won. I smiled to myself. His pride had led to his downfall, and my calm strength had helped me get through it. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the start of a new chapter in my life. A chapter where I was in control. A chapter where I chose happiness in my own way. For the first time in a very long time, I felt truly free.